Well, pull up a chair and set a spell here at Tales from SYL Ranch Live, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have the Fandi Masters review of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And hi, Marshall. Hi, Larry. Larry, you've got your towel, Larry. And Marshall, you're not going to miss anything for once. So, yay for you. Explaining my show for the benefit of viewers that may not come in directly on the hour. For new viewers, I do live reviews, and sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do schlock just for the kicks of it, and sometimes I review modern films with a broad appeal like Star Wars movies, Marvel movies. I reviewed Doctor Who as far as this season is going to go, Series 11, on Sunday nights as I did last night. I'll review Star Trek Discovery and The Orville. However, I usually stick to a period from about 1900 to 1980. And that's because the period after 1980 is pretty well documented because of all the great science fiction that we got after that and all the great technology that allowed us to document things. But the period from 1900 to 1980 has a lot of science fiction and a lot of science fiction fandom that isn't really well documented, and so part of the reason I do the show is to document it. It is live, so I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. I will respond to as many of my viewers as possible. You can tell me if I missed something, if I'm completely full of crap, or if I just happen to be amazingly awesome, which is probably more likely. I go into more depth than most of the reviewers. I don't just say if I like the film or not. I talk about acting, direction, cinematography, and the mechanics of making a film. And I can do this with some authority because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. So I can speak with modicum of authority. And I'm not as much as a modern working actor, and I never want to give that impression, but with some authority. They often say those who can do, and those who can't teach, and I think probably reviewing falls under the category of those who can't. So Marshall says, for those who will miss it, the Time Warp meeting is scheduled for last Thursday. Yes, this will be the Time Warp review of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And amazingly awesome crap. Yes, sometimes that is true. Now, as a non-spoiler review of this film, I have to tell you that as a standalone film, just all by itself, if you're just going to watch the movie, kind of sucks. It has some great and very memorable musical numbers that have become part of pop culture, but otherwise as a film, it kind of sucks. It was originally made and kind of aimed at a particular subculture that embraced homosexuality and transvestism, and it was considered not even remotely appropriate in 1975, and it's still rather controversial even today. However, despite the fact that it is a crap movie, it is a hell of a lot of fun when you see it in a theater with an audience who knows the audience participation parts of this. Now, I would not bother watching this at home on home video unless you're with a bunch of friends who know the audience participation rituals and will do them along with the thing, because you need that audience interaction for it to be any good at all. It really is kind of a crappy film all on its own. Kinda, unneeded word. 10 quatlus. Yes, yeah. It's a crap film. If you're watching it by yourself, if you're watching it in a theater with an audience that does not know it, it's just yuck. So to introduce, to do a bit of the film introduction, I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey. You see, it seemed a fairly ordinary night when Brad Majors and his fiancée, Janet Weiss, two young, ordinary, healthy kids, left Denton that late November evening to visit Dr. Everett Scott, ex-tutor and now friend to the both of them. Now it's true, there were dark storm clouds, heavy, black, and pendulous, toward which they were driving. It's also true that the spare tire they were carrying was badly in need of some air. But being two normal kids, and on a night out, well, they were not going to let a storm spoil the events of their evening. On a night out. It was a night out that they would remember for a very long time. By the way, if anyone is ever in the vicinity of Lincoln or Omaha, Nebraska, mounting the Rocky Horror Show, which I will talk about, you may feel free to use what I just said as my audition for the criminologist, the narrator of the film. I would come out of my 30-year retirement as an actor. You can bill this as William Stone comes out of his 30-year retirement to do this show. I would do that. I think it would be a kick. I'd be good for the narrator. Maybe Dr. Scott, although typically in the stage play, Dr. Scott and Eddie are played by the same person. And I can sing if I need to. I'm not the greatest singer, but I can do it. Says, hey, Captain Jesse, how are you tonight? And Larry asks, when did the audience participation start? After its release. I'm going to get into that momentarily, in fact. Now, in terms of a review, this is a very different review for me. To begin with, it's a musical, but it's also a movie that's utterly stupid as a film. It does successfully satirize tropes of B-movies, and if you are a Fandi master, and at the time that I saw it, I was a fairly advanced Padawan. I knew some of what was going on in it. It does successfully satirize a lot of these B-movie tropes, but if you're not prepared for it, it can make an audience member kind of uncomfortable. Unless you're in a theater and you have the audience participation. And frankly, being drunk, high, gay, or trans probably doesn't hurt. If you watch this on home video, you will wonder how the hell and why this thing has survived as long as it has. It's kind of a crappy movie. As Marshall says, kind of is almost a kind of additional word. You don't need it. What is up with the YouTube chat mode, especially with the latex boots and clothing? I'm not sure what you're meaning there about that. Latex boots and clothing in this film, we see some of it, not a ton of latex. A lot of fishnet, but not much latex. The backstory, to answer some of Larry's questions. This show, believe it or not, started as a stage play. I'm fined 10 quatlus. Well, thank God I don't have any of those, and I don't know what the exchange rate would currently be in dollars anyway. This film started life as a stage play, believe it or not. Now, the brains behind Rocky Horror Picture Show and the Rocky Horror Show is Richard O'Brien. Now, he was living as an unemployed actor in London in the early 1970s. He wrote this film, the stage play rather, one winter just to occupy himself. Now, since his youth, much like I was, he had been fascinated by science fiction and particularly B-horror movies. And he wanted to combine some elements of unintentional humor of some of those B-movies, the ones that are any good, you know. Frankenstein, 1970. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. But he wanted to combine that along with some of the pretentious dialogue that tends to be in those schlock films. And he also wanted to put in some connections to Steve Reeve movies. Now, if you don't know who Steve Reeve was, Steve Reeve was a competitive bodybuilder. He was a multi-Mr. Universe winner, which was the same thing, by the way, that Arnold Schwarzenegger won repeatedly, far more than he did. They're very different physically. But in fact, to some extent, Schwarzenegger patterned his career after Steve Reeves. If you read some of his biographies, he talks about how Steve Reeves was somebody he kind of looked up to. And Steve Reeves went and he did some very, very bad films. I think I've seen one or two, but the one I remember is a very bad Hercules movie. He plays Hercules, and he's so bad they dubbed him. Schwarzenegger, well, obviously he had a hell of a lot more success and eventually went on to be governor, amazingly enough. But he did have, Steve Reeves, something in his mind when he was doing it. Marshall says, after this play, he switched professions to become an unemployed writer. Yeah, pretty much. I'm going to get into that. Yes. Captain Justice, about 30 seconds between comments. Could there be a modern new Rocky Horror movie? Oh, God, no. I'll talk about that in point of fact. They tried something like that. Star Trek Discovery and The Last Jedi were both horror and fracked up their sci-fi canon. Yeah. Oddly enough, something similar happened with this, believe it or not. Chat slow mode is turned on. Oh, I didn't know that. Let me see if I can turn it off. I don't know how to turn off chat slow mode here. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can find out how to do that inside of my control panel here. If I've done that, I've accidentally turned it on, and I'm not seeing how to turn it off. I apologize for that. I don't see how to turn it off. Sorry, I blew it. I've had to, as my regular viewers know, I have had to change channels, and in fact, I'm going to do something even more startling. So when you get to wait till the end of the show, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do there. But one of the other things that Richard O'Brien wanted to do was put in 50s rock music into this musical, and that's probably where it is the most successful. Yes, fracking YouTube. I'll check this one on Wednesday when I do the simulcast of War of the Worlds. I will make absolutely certain that doesn't happen. Maybe I can do it here. Like, give me half a second. I hate doing this, interrupting a thing here to do it. I might be able to do it by going into the info and settings on my control panel to see if I can shut that off. Advanced settings. Auto start. Sorry, I'm looking here. Enable slow mode, and I have turned off slow mode. Hopefully this won't blow up my stream, having turned it off. So that should shut off slow mode. Yeah, it says that slow mode is off. Chat away is what it says. So thank you for pointing that out to me. I blew that. I'll make sure that doesn't happen on Wednesday night. So one of the other things that was an influence for Richard O'Brien was he had set this against the backdrop of what was called the glam rock era. Now, I don't know very much about this. It's not my thing. However, glam rock is a style of rock that was developed in the United Kingdom in the early 1970s, performed by musicians who wore outrageous costumes, makeup, and hairstyles, and particularly, as you can see in this picture, platform shoes and glitter. I suspect these guys had a very large influence on a band you might know called Kiss. So, Brian actually stated at one point or another that for him, glam rock allowed him to be more himself. So, hey, good for him. He found a version of rock that he liked. So, yeah, and David Bowie. David Bowie, as Larry says, was glam rock for quite a long time. Yeah, one of the biggest glam rock guys. I did notice that when I looked it up. Again, not my thing, so I really didn't know too much about it. But, when I saw them, I went, oh, this looks like Kiss to me. So, the Rocky Horror Show, the stage play. O'Brien, he had showed a piece of this unfinished script to an Australian director who did go on to direct the film, but he's largely a stage director, named Jim Sharman. Now, he'd worked with Sharman before in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, as well as The Unseen Hand by Sam Shepard. And when Sharman saw it, he thought, okay, well, this shows some potential. Let's do this in an experimental theater, which was exactly what they did. They did it in an experimental theater. And Sharman would actually be instrumental in bringing along just about everybody that worked behind the scenes, both on the stage play and in the film. All of the hair band of the 80s and early 90s were considered glam rock as well. Okay, not my thing. You know my music if you've watched, man. John Williams. That's my type of music. My day, Captain Jesse, was pretty good. I can't complain too much. I'm getting started selling quite a lot of silver and silverware and stuff that my mom's accumulated over the years on eBay for her. So that's sucking up some of my time. It's part of why you're going to start seeing me within a couple of weeks wearing glasses. Turns out I have an astigmatism in this one eye, and I need bifocals because I'm old. So you're going to start seeing me with glasses, but I discovered that sitting here trying to decide which freaking piece of silver, is this a tea, or is it coffee, or what the hell is this? And staring at it's made my eyes go nutty tonight. So anyway, the musical, when it was in rehearsal, actually had the title They Came from Denton High, which fortunately, at Sharman's suggestion, they changed to the Rocky Horror Show. It premiered at a 60-seat theater, the Royal Court Theater, which was an experimental theater at the time. It then went on to larger venues. It went to a 230-seat theater in August, 14th of August of 1973, and on the 3rd of November 1973, it found a fairly permanent home at a 500-seat theater where it ran for 6 years. Larry says, how did the live Rocky Horror include audience involvement? I will be going into that in some depth because, yeah, got to have it to watch this film. Otherwise, it sucks. And Larry says, T-Rex, Queen, Roxy Music, Elton John. Yeah, they were all glam rock at one point or another in their times. Queen, absolutely. Yeah. I just saw that and went, oh, Kiss. The musical was then picked up by a producer and the owner of Ode Records, Lou Adler. And it made a premiere in Los Angeles in 1974, and before it then played in New York City as well as other cities. And eventually it appeared on Broadway in 1975. It started on Broadway. Now, not long after that, the play was adapted for a motion picture. It opened in the United Kingdom on the 14th of August in 1975, and then in the United States on the 26th of September. It did pretty well in Los Angeles, but nowhere else. Now, this was kind of before we got into midnight screenings. This is a movie that is always shown at midnight. It is a midnight movie, and I'll explain my own involvement with this to some extent in a bit. Excuse me, Captain Jesse says, did theater hand special purpose cups to the male viewers? No, it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. It's a lot more fun, actually. But before we had the midnight movies, this film was ultimately withdrawn from its first opening 8 cities because it had crappy small audiences. Its planned New York City opening, which was on Halloween, was totally canceled. Fox then re-released the film to college campuses on a double feature. Yes, a science fiction double feature, though that's not where the that song gets its name, with Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, but again, it had pretty small audiences. However, midnight movies were having some success with the films Pink Flamingo and Reefer Madness. I may get around to reviewing Reefer Madness sometime if I get kind of desperate. It's an amusing little thing. And Fox was then able to talk the theaters into distributing it on midnight screenings. And the first one of these was in New York City on April Fool's Day of 1976. Now, this film became a cult classic. Shortly after it was released in its midnight run in New York City, it spread to other counties in New York, and it was eventually found in larger cities throughout the United States and even smaller ones. It showed here in Lincoln, Nebraska, which at the time was a city of about 150,000, every single Friday and Saturday night at midnight, religiously for years. Doesn't show here like that anymore, and that's probably because of home video, but it showed for years. I used to see this thing very regularly, because at the time, that was back in the day, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, when I was an actor. And so it was pretty common at theater cast parties that somebody would jump up at about 11:30 and say, hey, let's go and see Rocky Horror. And so we'd all pile into various cars and go drive off to see Rocky Horror after our cast times. Sometimes still does show in Lincoln, though not regularly. And again, I think that's probably due to home video, which is kind of too bad, because without that audience participation, this film is a terrible film. Now, one of the other things that happened after we got the start of this cult phenomenon, in New Orleans, there was an early organized performance group that was active. Now, these were just fans. They would dress up as the characters and sort of perform the movie right there as the movie was running, just as you see right there. This caught on. This caught on in a big way. It went through other major cities, and before long, just about every screening of the film was accompanied by a live cast. Now, Lincoln, Nebraska didn't get our live cast, frankly, until after my time. But we still had a lot of the audience participation, which is very important in this film. Even if there's not a live cast, there is always this audience participation. And that is what makes this film fun. I can't say it enough. Otherwise, this film sucks. You got to have the audience participation. Larry says, I like the Phantom of the Paradise better. Yeah, that's certainly possible. Without the audience, Rocky Horror's porn with story. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. As I say, it sort of was aimed at homosexual and trans people more than anything else. You could see this film, the characters of this film coming out and being in a gay pride parade. It's just that flamboyant, But fans have over the years, and not very far into when this thing started, developed certain general rituals and things that they would do with respect to the film. So, for example, that opening dialogue I did, I would like, if I may, and the way that that's done by the criminologist, who is the narrator of the film, is in such a way that there are a couple of pauses. So he says, "I would like," and the audience says, "Oh, you would you? If I may, you may, to take you on a strange journey." And then a little bit later, when he says, "When Brad Majors and his fiancée, Janet Weiss, slut," and it goes like that throughout the entire film. If there's a significant pause in dialogue, the fans have come up with something funny to say. And it's pretty regularized. You see the same thing at just about every theater that you see. It's just damn near ritualistic is what it's become. Rocky Horror Show best scene were the straight ones. As I say, it's a really crappy film unless you're watching with the audience. You have to have that audience participation. In addition, not only do they have these things that they tend to scream out. Yeah, honestly, Marshall says, the fans deserve a writing credit. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. One of the things about this is when I've seen it performed as a stage play, the actors have to actually allow for those pauses so that the audience, even in a stage setting, can yell out those things. But it's not just yelling those things out. They also use props. So, for example, there's a scene at the beginning where it's raining, and people will bring squirt guns and spray bottles and create sort of rain. Also, one of the characters, Janet, takes a newspaper, puts it over her head. The audience brings newspapers, and they put them over their head. There is an end of a speech where the Transylvanians, who I'll get into in a moment when I do the plot, are using noisemakers and applauding, and people also bring noisemakers with them. There's a moment when Frank takes out a wine glass and says, "A toast," at which point people throw toasted bread. Toast. A toast. People throw toast. There is a song, for example, also where that Frank sings, where he sings out a lyric, "Cards for sorrow, cards for pain," and people start throwing out playing cards. It's throughout the film. Throughout the film, all of that is happening. Without all that, this movie sucks. Late model sense around. Yeah, Brad was forced to be horror bisexual. Janet got lucky to be mostly straight scene. Yeah. You have to go into this movie being okay with homosexuality and transsexuality to some degree. And that sort of brings me into my next point. When I remember when I first saw this thing after a cast party, and I was A, completely mystified, and B, kind of uncomfortable, because it was 1975. I was after 75. It must have been around 80 or so, and that sort of thing could make you uncomfortable if you weren't prepared for it. I did later warm to the film because I came to understand that what really made it was that audience participation. It has some great songs, songs that have become part of our culture, but it really needs that audience participation or you're just screwed. Larry says, in the late 1980s, home video had special kits available for the participants with props and scripts. Yeah. I think on its 40th anniversary, they released a whole big series of soundtrack CD series, and one of them include an audience participation one, so you can hear the audience participation. Frankly, if it was me, I would have made that a second audio track. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray, but if they do that, I would hope that they would make that as just a second audio track on a Blu-ray so you could hear it. Interestingly enough, this film is considered the longest-running release in film history. It has never been pulled by 20th Century Fox since its 1975 release, and to this day is showing at a theater somewhere near you. Now, as Marshall says, Richard O'Brien kind of turned into an unemployed writer. he wanted to make sequels. He came up with several unmade sequels, one of which was Rocky Horror Shows His Heels. Now, this would have been a direct sequel, would have featured the original cast, would have brought back Frankenfurter, even though he dies at the end of this film, and then killed him again. I have read the plot. You can find it out there, and it sucks. Even on paper, you just go, no. When O'Brien talked about it with Tim Curry didn't want to be involved. What you do have to understand is this was a movie that really put Tim Curry on the map, but for a while it also kind of stereotyped him, and I can certainly understand him not wanting to do this anymore. Jim Sharman, who had directed the Rocky Horror Picture Show, he didn't really want to do it. Maybe he thought, something similar but different, and at that point this whole project was pretty much dumped. The interesting thing is, many of the songs that were written for this thing end up appearing in I'll get to it, a sort of sequel called Shock Treatment, and the songs were originally written for this show. And when you know that, and if you ever see Shock Treatment, which I don't suggest you ever do, you can see the songs are kind of out of place in that film. They would make more sense in the context of this one. Yeah, there's a plot. Where? Yeah, there's even less plot in that proposed sequel than there is in this movie. Bride of Rocky, kind of. Yeah, kind of. The Rocky Horror Show is hard to digest for straight and vanilla. Yeah. They call people who've never seen the film virgins. Kind of fits in with the film. You can find this stupid treatment if you want to. It is at rockyhorror.fandom.com. It's right out there for you to read if you really want to. It isn't worth it. Well, then O'Brien, looking for something, came up with another possible sequel called Revenge of the Old Queen. It would have also been this would have been a direct sequel. It would have been totally unrelated to Rocky Horror Shows His Heels. That was a failed one. Would have involved Frank's mother, who was the queen of the planet Transsexual, and we would discover that Frank was actually a prince next in line for the succession to the planet Transsexual in the galaxy of Transylvania. And Riff Raff was actually a general who never told her that he'd killed Frank. And it gets weirder after that. The script is out there. You'd have to Google it or something. I've read this draft script. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. So, not to be outdone, Richard O'Brien tried again with another movie called Rocky Horror Second Coming. Again, these were never made. His notion about this was he would make it first as a stage play, much like the original one was, with an option to create a film out of it if it was a success. The script would largely have integrated plot elements from Rocky Horror Shows His Heels, but with all new songs. And O'Brien has completed a first draft script of the film, but had difficulties finalizing beyond the first act, and nothing has been heard about this since the mid-2000s. Now, he did finally do it with Shock Treatment. Now, this is not really a sequel. I guess today, you would call this a reboot. It is a 1981 film directed by Jim Sharman again, co-written by Sharman and Richard O'Brien. It involves a complicated reality TV show thing at a time when reality TV shows did not exist. I've seen it twice, once in a theater and once on home video after, reality TV had become a thing. And I have to admit, in some ways, it's sort of prescient, but it's still a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. Captain just says, at least no one in the Rocky Horror Show trimmed and cut off their natural hairy pelvic zones. I think some of them probably did. I think that probably happened, in point of fact, because of some of the costuming. Now, the interesting thing, or the weird thing, or one of the many weird things about this piece of crap non-sequel, is that the events of the Rocky Horror Picture Show have never happened. Instead, we have Brad and Janet, who are married and having marital problems. None of the other main actors return, except for Richard O'Brien, Patricia Quinn, and Nell Campbell, but they are in totally different roles than they are in Rocky Horror. Brad was played by Cliff DeYoung, and Janet was played by Jessica Harper. It had a limited release as a midnight movie on October 30th, 1981, which is about the time that I saw it. It was a critical and commercial flop. Oddly enough, in 2015, it was adapted as a stage play in London. I don't know how well that did. As I say, I've seen it twice. Once in a theater with a bunch of theater people, and it really sucks. The songs are out of place. Once you know the backstory, you realize, oh, okay, these songs make a lot more sense in the context of some other freaking movie. I do have the soundtrack. Songs pretty much suck. As I say, most of them were written for the Rocky Horror shows his heels. Makes them very out of place. Don't bother watching it. Just don't. It's boring, it's stupid, and it has really no memorable songs. There's nothing in there that you're going to tap your feet to or anything. It has never achieved any kind of cult status and never will. Rocky Horror was a one-time deal. It was something that just organically happened, and you will never recreate it. It would be like trying to make a sequel to Tommy Wiseau's The Room. You know, it just can't happen. You know, there's no way. I don't know why they even bothered to try, other than, as Marshall said, Richard O'Brien was an out-of-work actor. So, what is the mistake for shock treatment to have none of the original cast except the main two? Well, it wasn't even the main two. I mean, the cast was totally different. It was just the two characters who were there. The cast was totally different, with the exception, basically, of Richard O'Brien and a couple of his friends. But again, I think the deal was nobody who really wanted to be involved in this thing in Rocky Horror ever wanted to be involved with it ever again. I mean, the principal actors went on to do other things. In fact, when I get to Susan Sarandon, I've got something really interesting there. But I can see, why would those people, especially Tim Curry, who had for some time kind of been typecast in this film, because he's brilliant at it. As bad as the movie is as a film, Tim Curry is amazing. And it put him on the map, and he was kind of typecast for a while after that. Unfortunately, he broke out of that and did do a lot of good work afterwards. But I think most of the cast just said, no, I don't see any reason to do that again. I'm doing other work, and it's better, and I'm a more well-regarded actor at this point. This was the beginning of a lot of their careers. So that being all said, setting the context for this film, I can issue me a...
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and as always, it is because I am the Fandi Master, and that means that the fandom is strong with me. And that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst, I figure it out about a half an hour early. And again, as always, this is not a boast nor a brag. This is sadly where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to about 100 years worth of science fiction. You just can't see all the new stuff without all century that came before, and it does sometimes interfere with your ability to enjoy things. Now, one of the things that I would say as a Fandi Master is that the Rocky Horror Picture Show, if you see it in a theater with an audience and the audience participation, is something that will help you become a Fandi Master. Yeah, my shields are up. I got a little different spoiler card this time. I was able to get the font that we see in Star Trek the Motion Picture and movies and all that. Why do I like the HD and Blu-ray version of Rocky Horror? Well, I've got a Blu-ray copy that I watched for this. I don't know why I watched it. I've only seen this thing about 4 million times. I don't know, just maybe the better quality. I don't know in terms of the print. Although, to be honest, the 4K, the Blu-ray print that I watched didn't jump out at me as being amazing. They didn't actually clean it up very much. I don't know. It's just a personal thing, I guess. So, as always, go through the plot of this film, keeping in mind that there are musical numbers throughout, and it is much better when you see it with an audience. So, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. We have a guy who is called the Criminologist, and he is the narrator of this. And again, if you're mounting this play anywhere near me, call me. I would be happy to play that part, and I think I'd be very good at it. So we have the newly engaged couple, Brad Majors and Janet Weiss, slut, who find themselves lost and with a flat tire on a cold and rainy November evening somewhere near Denton, Texas. So they start looking for a telephone because they passed a nearby castle in Denton, Texas, near Denton, Texas somewhere, where they discover then a group of strange and outlandish people who are holding a Transylvanian convention, and they're soon swept into the world of Dr. Frank N. Furter, a self-proclaimed sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. The ensemble of convention attendees also includes the servants Riff Raff, his sister Magenta, and a female groupie named Columbia. It just says it only takes 5-10 minutes to get the first screen. Yeah, it starts off pretty directly there. I mean, it's famous for these lips, and those opening titles. Monty Python and the Holy Grail became a midnight staple around that time, too. Yeah, I don't remember really going to see that. As theater people, it was always Rocky Horror. We always went to see Rocky Horror. I guess I can't tell you the number of times I've seen this movie. So Frank has a lab, and in his lab he claims to have discovered the secret to life itself. And so his creation, Rocky, is brought to life. And the ensuing celebration is soon interrupted by Eddie, who is an ex-delivery boy, whom is both Frank, you have to remember Frank is a male transvestite, and Columbia, who is a female. He's both their ex-lover, as well as a partial brain donor for Rocky, because Frank had taken half of Eddie's brain out and put it into Rocky's body. And Eddie drives out of a deep freeze where Frank has had him on his motorcycle. He then proceeds to, in a short span of one song, seduce Columbia, get the Transylvanians singing and dancing, and intrigues both Brad and Janet. And then when Rocky starts dancing and enjoying the performance, Frank gets jealous and kills Eddie with an ice pick. Columbia screams in terror and she's devastated, doesn't really recover throughout the rest of the film. And Frank justifies Eddie's killing as a mercy killing to Rocky, and both he and Rocky then proceed to a bridal suite. Brad and Janet are then shown to separate rooms, where each is then visited by Frank, who poses as Brad when visiting Janet, and as Janet when visiting Brad. This is, as you say, Captain Jesse, brain mutilation and the same brain transplant is very messy. Well, this film, in many, many ways, is satirizing and parodying some of the schlock films that I occasionally review on here, and some that aren't, by the way. For example, I invite you to have a look behind me here. I did not know this. I did not know where that reference came from, but even as a Fandi master, you have things you can learn. Until I had reviewed The Curse of Frankenstein, I had not realized that this thing that Rocky is in is essentially a parody of what the creature was, the tank the creature was in Curse of Frankenstein. So you can always learn something new. Logic's not here. Yeah, it's a musical to begin with, so you always have to have a certain forgiveness in terms of having songs in there. Actors often say, how do I justify singing a song in the middle of something? And the usual answer is, you just feel it bubbling up in you so much that you have to burst out in song, even though dialogue would work. It's always the thing with actors. What's my motivation? Why would I be motivated to do this particular thing? Sing a song. Well, for me, it was never an issue. It was just like, okay, time for the song. But some actors do get upset about that. So, after having been seduced, Janet's upset and emotional. She wanders off to look for Brad, who she discovers via a television monitor is in bed with Frank. She then discovers Rocky, who is cowering in his birth tank because he's been hiding from Riffraff, who's been tormenting him. And while tending to his wounds, Janet becomes infatuated with Rocky and intimate with him as Magenta, who is female, and Columbia, as I mentioned, she's also female, watch from their bedroom monitor as they do a musical number. Gavin just says, a singing partner in the middle of Sex of Two Lovers is pretty hard. Yeah, well, it's a musical. Logic is non-existent in this film anyway. You just have to go with it. You just have to go with it. So after discovering that his creation is missing, Frank returns to the lab with Brad and Riffraff, where Frank learns that an intruder has entered the building. It is Brad and Janet's old high school teacher, Dr. Everett Scott, the guy that we're going to go visit. And he's come to look for his nephew, Eddie. Frank suspects that Dr. Scott is investigating UFOs for the government, and upon learning that there is a connection between Brad, Janet, and Dr. Scott, Frank suspects them of working for Dr. Scott. So, Frank, Dr. Scott, Brad, and Riffraff then discover that Janet and Rocky are together under the sheets in Rocky's birth tank in one exchange that's pretty damn funny. Even in the context of a crappy movie, there's an exchange that's pretty funny. This upsets Frank and Brad both, and Magenta interrupts the reunion by sounding a big gong and stating that dinner is prepared, to which Frank says, under the circumstances, formal dress is optional. Breathing and making out can be hard for some people. Well, like I say, man, it's a musical. If you try to apply normal, logic, even to a good musical with a plot, the sound of music, it doesn't make sense that you would start singing those things. It's just a convention of musicals. You break out into song from time to time. So Rocky and the guests then share a rather uncomfortable, intense dinner, which culminates with discovering that they have been eating food prepared from Eddie's mutilated remains. So yes, a bit of cannibalism involved. Janet runs screaming away, which provokes Frank to follow her through the halls, and eventually Frank, Brad, Dr. Scott, Rocky, and Columbia all meet in Frank's lab, where Frank uses a device called the Medusa transducer to transform them into nude statues, which also, by the way, provides one of the things that's kind of funny in the audience participation. Either intentionally or unintentionally, the statue that they used for Columbia, her breasts are not quite the same size in the statue, and the audience yells out something about how it's lopsided. So then, yeah, eating humans is totally yucky. Yeah, the cannibalism part is yucky. It's kind of amusing in the context of the thing, because Dr. Scott has a line. He says, "What of Eddie?" And Frank is in the middle of cutting up some food, and he says, "That's a rather tender subject." And then everybody goes, and just backs off, except for Rocky, who's so stupid, he's just like, shoveling it in. So after dressing all of these frozen statues in cabaret costumes that include corsets, garter belts, and fishnet stockings, even for the female men, Frank unfreezes them, and they perform a live cabaret show complete with a RKO tower, which I wish I could have had. I had that as a background. Problem was totally obscured by me, because the tower was right in the center. There's also a swimming pool, by the way, and the swimming pool does some fun stuff where it satirizes some of those old 1950s musicals where you would get people in swimming pools and have swimming pool numbers. Kind of satirizes that pretty well. And Frank is the leader of this whole thing. Sound of Music has the same director as Star Trek the Motion Picture and The Day the Earth Stood Still. Yep, Robert Wise. Very, very kind of career that he had all the way through. Anyway, Riffraff and Magenta then interrupt the performance, revealing themselves and Frank to be aliens from the planet Transsexual in the galaxy of Transylvania. They stage a coup and announce that they are going to return to their home planet, and in the process, they kill Columbia and Frank, who they say has failed his mission. Real Breasts, Captain Jess says, are a little lopsided in Rocky Horror Show, and may have been an inside joke. Yeah, it may well have been. Other thing about that is when they get Columbia in her costume for the cabaret show, for the floor show, I think it was intentional, probably on Nell Campbell's part, but the corset she's wearing does not cover her nipples at all. So, and in the process of killing and Frank, the Rocky gets enraged, and they do this sort of thing where it's clearly satirizing King Kong climbing the top to the top of the Empire State Building, because he climbs to the top of the RKO Tower and ultimately plunges to his death in the pool that is below. And so Riff Raff and Magenta release Brad, Janet, and Dr. Scott, and then depart by lifting off in the castle itself as a rocket of some kind. The survivors are then left crawling in the dirt, and the narrator concludes that the human race is equivalent to insects crawling on the planet's surface, lost in time, lost in space, and meaning. And there's a bit of funny dialogue, one of the last things that happens in that film that the audience participation does, where he says, "Lost in time, what's your favorite TV show?" And "Lost in space, what does this movie lack?" And meaning. And scene. That is the plot of this silly thing. The songs and the audience participation pretty much make it. There are some memorable songs in here. And again, because of this cult status, it's pretty much found its way into popular culture. The TV show Glee did a version of the Time Warp, which is one of the more famous songs to come out of this film. Plot? There's a plot? Where? Marshall says. Deja vu, yeah. Okay, cringe moments. Always like to get that out of the way. Without an audience participation, almost everything is a cringe moment, except the songs, because they are memorable, they're kind of catchy, they are satirical right from the beginning, and occasionally they're kind of brilliant. I don't know if they would have made it had it not been for the cult classic and the audience participation and all that. Because like when they do the Time Warp, the audience gets up out of their seats and they go around the theater dancing the Time Warp. I've done that more than once. Yep, it's a jump to the left and then a step to the right, actually. So, there is one thing that knowing something about the stage play and the film, there's an alteration to the lyrics of the song "I Can Make You a Man" that altered from the stage play and the movie, and probably for rights reasons or something like that. But I'll get into that when I talk about the songs. And that's a cringe moment for me for a number of reasons. And without the audience participation, this is simply a terrible movie. If you're watching it at home, you're watching it for two reasons. You saw it in the theater, and you're remembering the audience participation. Three reasons. You saw it in the theater, you're remembering this audience participation. Hopefully, if you're watching it at home, you have a group of friends with you who know the rituals, who know the audience participation, and they're doing it right there, too. If you have never seen it, however, and you watch at home, you're going to wonder why anyone cares about this crap. For the film to be any good, you have to have the audience participation. You just have to. It is a requirement. Dr. Demento always played the Time Warp. Yeah, Time Warp is a catchy tune. I like the Time Warp. I'll be honest, I occasionally use the Time Warp as a warm-up song for when I'm doing this. I do Shania Twain. I do some of that. I do Alice's Restaurant. I sometimes do it. I like that song. But you really do need that audience participation, and this thing just kind of sucks. Now, there are some great moments. Even without the audience participation, the songs tend to be pretty good. You know, they're catchy, they're memorable in some cases. It is a good satire of B-movie tropes. It is a good satire of some of the pop culture of the time, particularly when you get into the production design. I'm going to talk a lot about that. So, getting into the writers on this, well, Richard O'Brien. He is credited for the original musical play, obviously, and for the screenplay. Now, Richard O'Brien's IMDb, strangely enough, goes 1965 to 2017 with 44 acting credits. It's not horrible. It's not horrible. He's got 37 soundtrack credits. You may remember him if you watch very damned closely. He plays in the 1980 Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon movie. He plays one of Prince Baron's underlings. Another interesting tidbit about that film, if you're an audiophile as I am. The lightning sound effect used in the Rocky Horror Picture Show is the same lightning sound effect used in that Flash Gordon movie. He's won some awards. Richard O'Brien has won an award. He won the Berlin International Film Festival Award in 1998 for not Rocky Horror, but for something called Special Teddy, which I have the slightest clue what is. The other writer on this is Jim Sharman, who was also director. He's credited for screenplay as well. His IMDb is 1972 to 2012, with a large gap between 1981 and 2012, with only 6 director credits and 5 writer credits. However, this is because Jim Sharman is largely a theater director and largely operates out of Australia. If I went back and looked at his theater stuff, I'm sure I would find quite a lot of work. He's very successful. He has won an award in 1979. He won the Avoriaz Fantastic Film Festival Award, special mention for The Night, the Prowler. We got into character as well. Dr. Frank N. Furter, played by Tim Curry. This is the film that put him on the map. He had done a few things before this, but this was the film that put him on the map. Without this film, he might not be as successful an actor as he turned out to be. His IMDb is 1966 to present, with 230 acting credits, making him a worker. I always like to call these guys out. My regular viewers all know I do this all the time. But I like to call it out for new viewers, because when you have this many acting credits over any period of time like that, you are in a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of actors. Most actors wait tables. There are tens of thousands of actors out there whose names you'll never know unless they happen to be a waiter who signs the check that they hand over to you to pay. So for him to have that many credits means he is a worker. Now, Rocky Horror was, in fact, his first film. Now, he's done mostly TV with multiple shows and multiple regulars, and he's done a fair amount of voice acting. In fact, he was the voice of Palpatine and Sidious in the Clone Wars series from 2012 to 2014. He's won some awards. He won the Behind the Voice Actor Award in 2013 for Transformers Rescue Bots. He won the Daytime Emmy Award in 1999 for Peter Pan and the Pirates, and he has 11 nominations, including a Razzie. One for Worst Supporting Actor for the film Congo, which I barely remember, but he lost that one out to Dennis Hopper for his performance in Waterworld, and I agree with that one. I've seen Waterworld. There is a Razzie for you. Other people that we've come to know in other movies and other things. Susan Sarandon, she played Janet Weiss in this. Yeah. She's had a lot of work done. Even she says she's had a lot of work done. Her IMDb is 1973 with 153 acting credits, which also makes her a worker. You've probably seen her in all kinds of things. She currently has two movies that are completed, scheduled for a 2019 release, and 3 that are in pre-production. She has done a mix of TV and films with multiple TV series and multiple regulars. Her awards. Oh, God. This is a new record on this show. I have never seen anyone with this many awards, and so I'm going to try to get through them as fast as possible because it is rather astonishing. She won the Oscar in 1996 for Best Actress for Dead Man Walking. She won the BAFTA in 1995 for Best Actress for The Client. She won the 2020 Award in 1995, Best Actress The Client. She won the AARP Movie for Grown-Ups Award in 2014 for Career Achievement Award, the Blockbuster Entertainment Award in 1997 for Favored Actress in a Drama for Dead Man Walking, the Boston Film Festival Award in 1992 for Film Excellence Award. She won the Cable Ace Awards in 1987 for Best Actress in a Dramatic Series for Oxbridge Blues. The Cannes Film Festival Award in 2016, she got the Caring Woman in Motion Award. The Cape, New Jersey State Film Festival Award in 2002, the Governor's Award. Chicago International Film Festival Award in 2005, a Career Achievement Award. The Clotrudius Awards in 1996 for Best Actress for Dead Man Walking. The CinemaCon Award in 2016, the Cinema Icon Award. The Cine Euphoria Awards in 2014 for an Honorary Career Award. The David Donatello Awards in 1992 for Best Actress in Best Foreign Actress, for Thelma and Louise, and again, 1996 for Best Foreign Actress for Dead Man Walking. She won the Women in Hollywood Award in 1999, the Icon Award, and then again in 2012 for Women of the Year. The Film Society of Lincoln Center, she got a gala tribute in 2003. She won the Genie Awards in 1981, Best Performance by a Foreign Actress for Atlantic City, USA. The Fandi Film Festival Award in 2010, she got the Francois Truffaut Award. She won the Golden Camera Award in Germany in 2015 for Best International Actress for her body of work. She won the Gotham Awards in 1992, an Actor Award. The Harlem International Film Festival Award in 2005, the Renaissance Award. She won the Hasty Pudding Theatrical Award in 1996 for Woman of the Year. She won the Hollywood Film Festival Award in 2005. She won the Kansas City Film Critics Circle Award in 1981 for Best Actress for Atlantic City, USA, and then again in 1995 for Best Actress for Dead Man Walking. She won the Kids' Choice Award in 2001 for Favorite Voice from an Animated Movie for Rugrats and Parrots, the movie Rugrats 2. She won the Las Palomas Film Award in 2007, an honorary Lady Hara Magwada Award. I hope I got that right. She won the Las Vegas Critics Society Film Award in 2002 for Best Supporting Actress. She won it for two films, Igby Goes Down and Moonlight Mile. She won the Locarno International Film Festival Award in 2005, an Excellence Award. The London Film Critics Circle Awards in 1992 for Actress of the Year for both Thelma and Louise and White Palace. She won the Marrakesh International Film Festival Awards in 2006, an honorary award of the festival. She won the Munich Film Festival Award in 1997 for the Cinemerit Awards, the Nashville Film Festival Award in 2002 for Freedom in Film Award, the National Board of Review in 1992, the Best Actress for Thelma and Louise, the New York Women in Film and Television Award in 1994. 1990, she won the Muse Award. The Online Film and Television Association Award in 2010, Best Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture or Miniseries for You Don't Know Jack. The Palm Springs International Film Festival Award in 1996 for Desert Palm Achievement Award. The Philadelphia Film Festival Award in 2006, an Artistic Achievement Award. The San Diego Film Critics Society Awards in 1998, Best Actress for Stepmom. The San Sebastian International Film Festival Award in 1995, she won the Donostia Lifetime Achievement Award. She won the Satellite Awards in 2005. She won the Mary Pickford Award from them. The Screen Actors Guild Award in 1996, Best Outstanding Performance by a Female Actor in a Leading Role for Dead Man Walking. She won the Shanghai International Film Festival Award in 2011 for Outstanding Contribution to World Cinema. She won the Show West Convention Award Humanitarian Award in 1998. As we often see with some of these, she won the Sitges Catalonian International Film Festival Award and Honorary Grand Prize in 2017. She won the Sonoma Valley Film Festival Award, Lifetime Achievement Award in 2011. She won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Stockholm Film Festival in 2009. She won the Taos Talking Picture Festival Maverick Award in 2002. She won the Venice Film Festival Award in 1982, Best Actress for Tempest. She got her star on the Walk of Fame for Motion Pictures in 2002. Won the Women's Film Critics Circle Award in 2004 for an Acting and Activism Award. And finally, the Women in Film Crystal Awards in 1994. That is the most awards I have ever seen on this show. Just say she's won a lot of awards. She's a sweetheart of the Hollywood left. Abso-frackin-lutely. Hey, no, I'm not going to stop. I was going to go through that whole damned thing. Just because I was astonished at the number of awards she won. Thank God I never do that again. Frankly, I doubt that I will ever have to do that again. I don't think that's something that I will ever have to repeat ever again. That is a show record for the number of awards that anyone has ever won. In terms of her performance here, this was early in her career, but she still does a good job. It is a campy part. She plays it relatively straight, but with lots of camp. You can't not with this thing. But in terms of what she does, she's totally believable. You could see, I mean, she's, aside from being darling of the left, and some of those awards, admittedly, some of those awards were just because she was a woman, and they like her on the left. But she is a legitimately good actress, and you can see that showing here even in fairly early in her career. Yeah, put it in a crawl. Yeah, that would work. Then, as Brad Majors, we have Barry Bostwick. His IMDb goes currently 1970 to present with 171 acting credits, so he's also a worker. He's got 6 in post, a mix of film and television, and when he's done television, he's done multiple TV series with multiple regulars. He won just one award, Golden Globes in 1989, and I love how they have these really long award names. He won Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role in a Series, Miniseries, or Motion Picture Made for Television for War and Remembrance, and he also has 5 other nominations. Yeah, he played George Washington, did he? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one, so I couldn't tell you for sure what he did there. Okay, his performance here, again, fairly early in his career. He's a fairly accomplished actor. I've seen him in a lot of other things, and I think he's pretty good. Obviously, has maintained something of his rugged good looks even into his current age. I don't think that he has had any work done. I've seen him in other things. He's a pretty decent dramatic actor, and I have no problem with his performance here. He's playing sort of a very, campy, stereotypical guy, constantly, at the beginning, sort of, Janet will say things like, "Oh, Brad, I'm frightened," and he'll turn to her with this big, strong jawline and say, "It's all right, Janet," or when they're taking the clothes off of them, he'll say stupid things like, "Don't worry, Janet, we'll go along and pull out the aces when the time is right," and he does a good job with that. No problem with his performance here. Why does Barry Bostwick look a lot like George Lucas? I don't know. I guess there's some resemblance. He's in better physical condition, I think, than George Lucas is at this point. But I guess it's a little bit of one. Again, I like his performance fine. He's playing, again, this whole thing is to put in some of these bad B-movie tropes, and he's playing those fine. He plays it as straight as you can when you're doing bad B-movie tropes. So... Then we have Richard O'Brien himself, who appears in this film as Riff Raff. He is the guy who sings the opening titles that the lips are on. I talked about his thing in the past, so I'll just talk about his performance. He does a pretty good performance here. He is the satirization of that trope of the hunchbacked, messed up assistant, who then, as it turns out, later turns out to be somebody who is more important than the main character. The weird thing about it is I'm not sure this guy's got the greatest singing voice in the world, but he does have a couple of numbers, and he pulls it off. So he pulls off the performance. I think he's fine. I think he's perfectly fine. This is his brainchild. This is his baby. He's doing this part the way that he would want to play this part if he was playing this part. So he's playing this part. Show him as Riff Raff. What's the point? Add a little hair. It's one of the deals where he's gotten older. He's got some more lines in his face and stuff. But really, here's a guy that's not changed a whole hell of a lot since that time. And I don't have a still of him as Riff Raff. So I'm not going to show him as Riff Raff because that would involve me making a whole new card and it would look nasty and horrible and rotten and awful to you guys. Excuse me, reading off that giant long list of awards for Susan Sarandon has left my throat just a little bit off. Then we have Patricia Quinn, who thankfully I do not think has had any work done. She plays Magenta, one of the servants and Riff Raff's sister. And they There is some suggestion of incest between the two characters, which leads the audience to say at one point, incest is best, relatively speaking. Her IMDb is 1963 to 2013 with 51 acting credits, mix of film and TV. She's done multiple TV shows with multiple recurring characters. Don't see her a lot, really. Her performance is fine. She does a couple of different things in this. One is to be this sort of stereotypical yet very slutty kind of, domestic servant. But at the end, they do something really hysterical with her hair. If you've ever seen the film Bride of Frankenstein, the one that was put out by Universal, one of the iconic things that they have in there is the Bride of Frankenstein's hair is like sticking straight back up, and she has these wavy, just absolutely straight white lines. And they give her that at the end of this. It's a satire on that. Not a hell of a lot to do, really, in the film, but her performance is fine. I really have no problems with her performance. Then we have Nell Campbell, who is credited in this film as Little Nell. She plays Columbia, the groupie, and unfortunately, with her as well, I don't think she's had any work done. Her IMDb is 1974 to 2010 with 25 acting credits, which is a mix of film and TV, which Rocky Horror was her third. Among other things, she has opened, a long time ago, opened up a nightclub. I think the name of it is Little Nell's. I might be mistaken. Maybe it's just Nell's. But she's very much capitalized on her role in this film and the fact that it's a cult classic to pretty much keep that part of her career going and having that, that nightclub. I think her performance here is very funny. She is supposedly a groupie of Eddie and also Frank to some extent. But that's not exactly how she comes off. She comes off as this very kind of nasally voiced, high-pitched, kind of whiny person who fits perfectly in with the rest of these loonies. I like her performance. I think she does a fine work here. You always have to remember, these people are playing camp. This is camp when it comes to their performance. Total camp. It is totally self-aware humor, and they are playing it as totally self-aware humor. It's like watching the 1960s Batman series. Totally self-aware, totally aware that it's goofy and silly and stupid, and playing that as, straight as you can, but being self-aware that it's goofy. Pardon me, that was a big one you didn't get to hear. She has won no awards. Then we have a guy I could not find a more contemporary picture for. His IMDb is Jonathan Adams. He plays Dr. Everett Von Scott, the Dr. Scott that is going to meet, that Brad and Janet are going to meet. He's, I think, the only one of the cast that's passed away. He died in 2005. And his IMDb is 1965 to 2001 with 78 acting credits with TV and film, multiple TV shows, multiple recurring characters, mostly British, I think almost entirely British shows. Captain Jesse asks, what happened to any humor in day TV and movies except for a few movies? Well, as with everything in Hollywood, they went dark. I don't know. There's some stuff that I find funny. I haven't been following up on The Big Bang Theory the way that I probably should have. I know that's either just ended or is about to end. I used to find that hysterically funny in the early years. So, got to run, work calls. We'll watch the rest later. Well, thank you, Marshall. Be aware to watch the end because things are going to change on this show in a big way next week. Anyway, he plays Dr. Scott. Again, fine performance. He is playing sort of this stereotypical German scientist. One of the interesting things about post-World War II, a lot of the German scientists who might have been put in jail following World War II got out of it by virtue of going to work for the federal government, typically in rocketry or other sciences. He's a parody of that, and of course he's confined to a wheelchair We only see him moving his legs at the end when his mind snaps and his life will be lived for the thrills. And no, I am not wearing fishnet stockings under here to bring up my legs to show you. Again, it is one of those deals where he's doing a parody. The interesting thing about this is, in the stage play, typically when the stage play is mounted, the actor who plays Eddie and the actor who plays Dr. Scott are the same person. Because think about it, they're not on screen at the same time, ever. And so it's an interesting deal when you see that on, I'll talk about it when I get to the soundtrack that I own from one of the Roxy Theater one that was in Los Angeles. But in that one, Meatloaf played both Dr. Scott and Eddie, which is a little weird. Dr. Scott here is shown with a very low voice, and frankly, the guy can barely sing. But when you see it on stage plays, it's totally different. It's totally different. It is a singing role, and he doesn't do much singing here. I suspect the actor couldn't sing that well. But he does a fine performance. He's just doing a parody of these like German scientists that the U.S. and the West picked up after World War II. Gavin Jesse asks, did I watch a Smallfoot movie? Was that a fun movie? I haven't seen that, no. Russia and the U.S. got as many German scientists as they could and later competed in the space race. Yes, abso-frackin-lutely. Took them straight out of Germany. Had they not, these guys probably would have gone to prison or been tried for war crimes in some cases. But he's being a stereotype of that and fairly well satirized. And again, he's playing it straight with, the general overarching knowledge that this is camp. Oh, and then we have Peter Hinwood as Rocky Horror, the muscle man who is built by Frank Enfurter. His IMDb is 1968 to 1976 with 4 acting credits and no awards. His performance, it's okay. I assume he could sing. I think that's his voice. He has a song. I assume he could sing. That's pretty much the end of what I would have to say about him. And I think the fact that he has a fairly short IMDb probably is indicative of that. He was a guy who was clearly somebody who worked out. He may have had I didn't check him. He may have had some background in bodybuilding. But he didn't go far with acting. He didn't go far at all. Captain Jesse asks, was Rocky a true role of this guy's acting career? It's certainly the biggest one. I don't know what else he's done. As I say, he's only got 4 credits, and I don't know what else he's done. My guess is that, given the time period, he must have just played muscular dudes. So, was it his last role? Let me check it here. 1968 to 76. I think that maybe there was one right after that, because this came out in 75, if I recall. So there was probably one right after that. But being the big muscle guy doesn't take you that far, unless you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you can somehow turn it into a frackin' career. Go figure. Arnold Schwarzenegger actually turned out to not be a horrible actor. He was certainly great for doing action movies and stuff like that. But he's also not a horrible actor, really. When did Peter Hinwood get out of acting? His last role was 1976, was when he got out. And then we have the inestimable Meat Loaf as Eddie. Meatloaf, by the way, his actual name is Marvin Lee Aday. But he goes by Meatloaf and always has. His IMDb is 1962 to present, with 103 acting credits, 58 soundtrack credits. Rocky Horror is his first listed one, but he is a very well-known rock musician. Has done some rather seminal work that lots of people have heard over the years. He's also produced different records. He's produced other TV shows, movies rather. He was one of the guys who came into this, with some level of people understanding that he was a kind of a rock star at the time. And so he didn't have to worry about getting typecast. He just had to do his thing in this movie. It's not quite him just playing himself as he was at that time, but damn close. And He's only on screen for like 5 minutes and has for the duration of one whole musical number, and then he's gone. But he does fine. He does fine. It's Meat Loaf singing the song, and he does really well at it. It's a great thing. He has got 3 nominations for awards, but none that he's actually won. Why did he get out of acting? Meat Loaf? He never really did. Or do you mean Peter Hinwood? I don't know for Peter Hinwood. I just don't know. Meat Loaf has never really gotten out of it. He's been involved in performing since '66. He's been doing some level of performing, either on screen or in and not just singing. He's done straight parts on screen. I've seen him do straight parts. And he's done a lot of producing, and he's done a fair amount of work. The guy is pretty versatile. Most people think of him as a rock star, but he has done a lot of other stuff behind the scenes. Peter Hinwood, I don't know why he got out. I suspect, if you see him in Rocky Horror, he's starting to go bald. It is one of the ritual things that fans do as part of the audience participation is talk about, there's a scene, there's a shot where you can kind of see his hair is pretty thinning. If you're going to be a muscle man, you kind of have to have a good head of hair. And really, I don't think he was the greatest actor in the universe. I think he was probably more a bodybuilder, could sing some. But where do you go with that? How many roles are there going to be for people to do that? So, Meat Loaf always pokes fun at this movie on talk shows. Oh, I'm sure he does. Yeah, I'm sure he does. He's gone on to do a million things. This was neither the first nor anywhere near the last. He was a well-known rock star at the time. So. Then we have Charles Gray. And again, I couldn't find a better, more contemporary thing. He's also left us. He died in 2000. He plays the criminologist, who is the guy who narrates all the way through here. His IMDb is 1957 to 2000 with 134 acting credits, so he's pretty much a worker. He did largely British productions in both TV and film, multiple TV shows with multiple regulars. You may recognize him as having played Blofeld in at least one of the Bond movies. Oddly enough, I think he's a pretty good actor, but oddly enough, he has never won an award. So... his performance here, he is the straightest of the straight men. He is the narrator. He has opinions about some of the debauchery that we see going on around. It's why I would like to play this character someday. Wouldn't necessarily do him with a British accent, but I would very much like to play that character someday. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I think he was having fun here too. Again, it's self-aware. He knows, he's got this self-awareness about what kind of movie he's in. But, when he's doing the dramatic stuff, it was a night out that they would remember for a very long time. It's totally straight, and perfectly works for this performance. It's him. Captain Jesse says, it's too bad the song I Would Do Anything With Love was written in the mid-1980s by Meat Loaf, because that song, I Would Do Anything With Love, would have been a good song for Rocky Horror. I don't know. Different kind of thing. But, yeah, Meat Loaf did just a ton of work. And not just as a rock star. He's done a lot of stuff that you may not know about. He was a Bond ally in 2 different Bond movies. I did not know that one. Well, I missed something. Jim Steinman wrote Meat Loaf hit songs. I didn't know that either. But he was certainly a good performer. He was a good singer. He just wrote some stuff that was, or didn't write, but sang and performed some stuff that was really memorable. For people on my generation, we remember Meat Loaf. Some of the stuff that he did was great. Now, getting into the production, we have Jim Sharman. Once again, I sort of did him. His direction here. He's really very good. He's really very good for a stage act director who's now doing a transition over to a film. I don't know how many films he'd done before this. But as a stage director coming over, he does some good camera work. He does some good stuff. The camera is fluid. It moves around. There's lots of dolly shots. They have a couple of jump scares, but they're very self-aware jump scares. He's totally aware of what kind of movie he's making, and that it's very campy, and that it's... he works well in conjunction, frankly, with the guy who is the production designer, which I'll have a lot to talk about. He works very well in conjunction with that. There's a lot of stuff on the sets that you may not notice right off the top of my head. I've been watching it for years, and I've noticed a lot of them. But he works well in conjunction with that. In particular, that floor show, where they get the whole sequence in the swimming pool. A complete parody of several 1950s musicals where they would have numbers involving pools, swimming pools. And by the way, there's a great line about that. Frank is at one point in the middle of the pool. There's a brief interlude where the music is changing, and the audience will yell out, "Waiter, waiter, there's a transvestite in my soup. Don't tell anyone. Everybody will want one." You know, so that's an example of the sort of thing you get with the audience participation. Which movie is more campy? Star Trek V. Oh, Rocky Horror. Star Trek V is not intentionally anything campy. It was totally intended to be serious. Rocky Horror is very much camp. Yeah, Esther Williams movies. Thank you, Larry. I was actually trying to remember her name. But yes, Esther Williams in the 1950s did a whole bunch of musicals that involved her swimming and, you know, synchronized swimmers around her. And so having that pool and doing the direction the way that Jim Sharman did was very much an Esther Williams parody. And it works very, very well, to be honest. I like that a lot. It's one of the things I like about that. The RKO Radio Studios, tower, if you've ever seen that. As I say, I thought about putting it in back here, but then I realized you wouldn't be able to see it. The RKO Radio Tower, its use, and the fact that then we see Rocky basically kind of doing a King Kong thing at the end, I thought was great. He does real good direction for a musical. It's easy to frack up a musical. It really is. A musical in film is easy to frack up. It's a little harder to frack up on stage, because on stage, hell, I've been in musicals. Now, I can sing okay, but I cannot dance at all. So sometimes they would put me on stage when they needed a big dance number, and they would put me in what we call character shoes when it was supposed to be tap dancing, because I can't tap. I remember Falap Ball Change from the one time they put me up there, but they didn't dare put tap shoes on me. Instead, they put me behind a small railing that hid my feet and the bottom parts of my legs. It's a little harder to frack up a stage musical as long as you have a good choreographer. But a good choreographer here and a good director, they can do something good with that. The direction around the time warp, very nice, very good. The direction when they're having the floor show, also generally very good. And again, there's a lot of working with what's going on the sets here with the production designer, because there's a whole bunch of stuff on this that you may not have noticed. Esther Movies, her movies were directly got synchronized swimming into the Olympics. Really, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I know synchronized swimming is an Olympic event, but I did not realize it was Esther Williams. But yeah, she made a ton of those. And again, Jim Sharman's direction here I think is fine. I think it's great. I think it's great, to be honest. I think it's very, very good. I got a lot of pictures, oddly enough, out of this one. Director of cinematography is Peter Shasinski. Hey, I got that last name. The spelling sucks. He was the director of photography here. He has an IMDb. It goes 1964 to 2017 with 53 cinematographer credits, almost exclusively film. But get this, he was also director of photography on Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. He was the cinematographer on that film. He's won some awards. He won the David DiNatello Award in 2016 for Best Cinematography for Tale of Tales. He's won the Genie Awards multiple times, once in 1989 for Best Achievement in Cinematography for Dead Ringers, 1992, same thing for Naked Lunch, 1996, same thing for Crash, and in 2008, same thing for Eastern Promises. He's won the International Cinematographers Film Festival Award, Manaki Brothers Award in 2009, the Golden Camera 300 for Lifetime Achievement. He also won the Lisbon and Estoril Film Festival Award in 2011, a tribute achievement, essentially it's a lifetime. And finally, the National Science Society of Film Critics Awards in 1991, Best Cinematography for Where the Heart Is. Captain Jesse says, how did they manage to make Rocky Horror Show Castle look like a real house with so many rooms? Yeah, that's an interesting thing. They don't actually have that many sets. It is largely due to production design. They don't really have that many sets. They've only got 3 or 4 sets. But the production design allowed them to redress those sets really dramatically. So they did a good job with that in terms of making it look bigger than they actually had the budget for. Larry says, lots of fans consider Empire Strikes Back best film of the series. Yup, and he was the cinematographer on that puppy. In terms of his cinematography here, I have, knowing that Jim Sharman directed the stage play in multiple incarnations, I would have to guess that this is one of those times when Jim Sharman was largely calling the shots. I can't say that for certain, but I would have to guess. So, as always, when that happens, we fall back on the old standbys. You could see what you were supposed to see, and you knew what you were supposed to be looking at. I think he does a fine job here. You know, the fact that just a few years later he would go on to be cinematographer on Empire Strikes Back, which, as Larry says, considered one of the best, and I think he does great work there as well. Knowing now, because I did not know until I went to this review that he was the same guy. Knowing now, I could say, yeah, this is something I could see a little bit earlier in his career. He does a good job here. He certainly got the shots the director wanted, and that in a musical is rather important. It's hard to describe how difficult it is to shoot a musical. When you've got it on stage, right, you have a choreographer, they say, go here, go there, do this, do that, and as long as everybody gets it right, even in a big number like the Time Warp, as long as they get it all right, it's going to work out. But you can't in a musical do that on film. You can't just point the camera and let people go. You have to break it up. You have to put it down and show individual people. You have to show, there are reaction shots, for example, that happen. Columbia falls down. She's tap dancing at one point. Here's an interesting thing I learned much later in life. I was marginally impressed with her tap dancing in Rocky Horror Picture Show, but then my daughter started taking dance, and when she saw, she said, "Oh, Dad, that is the easiest thing to do in the world." Oh, okay. But she falls down at one point during the song, and they take the time to do close-ups of her and wide shots with her and Magenta, showing that Magenta's kind of pissed at her. Doing that sort of thing in a film is, for a musical number, an important thing to do. And they got it right. They did very well all the way through, I thought, with that. Captain Justice asks, how is J.J. Abrams going to save the shit show that is Star Wars The Last Jedi? I don't know. Personally, I think it's unsalvageable. I don't know how the hell you save that. I really don't. I really don't know how you save it. I don't know. I could see them doing something like, frankly, if they turned episode 9 into episodes 9 and 10 and let J.J. Abrams run the show, so at least there would be continuity. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to fix that. Composer, as I have mentioned, this whole thing is the brainchild of Richard O'Brien. I talked about his career. Now, I want to talk about some of the songs in here because some of them are really interesting in terms of what they do. The opening song, Science Fiction Double Feature. The lyrics, the entire way through, reference old science fiction movies. Right from the start. Michael Rennie was ill the day the earth stood still, but he told us where we stand. Well, Michael Rennie starred in The Day the Earth Stood Still. And Flash Gordon was there in silver underwear. Yeah, Yeah, Flash Gordon. Claude Rains was the Invisible Man. Yeah. Then something went wrong for Fay Wray and King Kong. Yeah. They got caught in a celluloid jam. I think that may have been stuck in there to make sure they had a rhyme. And then at a deadly pace, It Came from Outer Space. Well, It Came from Outer Space is an old 1950s movie. And I have to tell you, even as a Padawan at the time, I knew about those movies. I hadn't seen them all, but I knew about them. And then they talk about science fiction double feature, which was a thing in the 1950s. And then they get back into the rest of the lyrics. And they're all, from beginning to end, they are all references to 1950s movies. And they seem to generally work. They're telling you, you know, we are about to satirize this whole damn thing. And that's what they do. Did Richard O'Brien ever play in Star Wars? Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware that he's ever been in Star Wars. He's been in that 1980 Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon movie, but he is... I don't really recall too many places I've ever seen him acting. I don't know. He's probably been around. I just haven't noticed particularly. I'm going to bounce over Dammit Janet. There's a Light, The Frankenstein Place. Again, all songs he wrote. But then The Time Warp. The Time Warp. This is a song that, due to this film's cult classic status, has become an integral part of American culture. You see it used over and over in different contexts. As I say, Glee did an episode with it. The Drew Carey Show did an episode with it. If you don't know any of the other songs from this, you may well have heard The Time Warp. It is, and it's why I call this is my Time Warp review. It's one of those things that's found its way into popular culture and it stays there, and you see over and over and over from time to time. So that one is just really, really, really catchy tune. It's a nice dance number. The way they do it on film is a lot of fun, and it's one that the fans have always glommed onto. You know, when you get into the audience participation, part of that is the fans tend to sing the songs. I know all the lyrics from every single one of these songs. I have sung them all at various times. I use a few of them for warm-up material sometimes before this show. And, you know, The Time Warp is one of them. It is something, and it's only because of the cult status of this film. It has become something of a classic song. So, hand it to him. He did that. This film seems to be his Citizen Kane, like Orson Welles, the one major hit in his career. Yeah, and solely because of the fans. This film, as it was originally put out, as I said, a complete piece of crap. If you watch it as a standalone film, complete piece of crap. If it weren't for the fans and the cult status and all of these, you know, sort of ritualistic behaviors and stuff that people have with it, it wouldn't go anywhere. But The Time Warp, because of all that, because I remember so many times, you know, the moment it's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll. Everybody's getting up out of their seats. Let's do the time warp again. Ah, man, a million times I've done that in the theater, and because of that, it survives to this day as something of a classic. Other songs. Sweet Transvestite, I'll generally pop over. Sword of Damocles, I'll generally pop over. Not impressive to me. However, I mentioned at the beginning, there's something of a cringe moment when it comes to I Can Make You a Man. Now, this is sung by Frank and Brad, Janet, Riff Raff, Magenta, and Columbia. I have some lines in it. But there is a change in lyrics from the stage version to the film that makes the film version make no damn sense. Real quick here. Is Rocky Show actually better than Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery? If you got the audience participation, I would say yes. But here's how they screwed up when they made these changes to the lyrics. In the stage play, the lyrics explicitly reference Charles Atlas. Now, if you don't know, if you're not old enough to know, Charles Atlas ran a whole bunch of ads in a whole bunch of like comic books and magazines advertising something that he called dynamic tension. I have no idea what this really was, but the deal was, this was an ad that ran all the time in these things, and it always showed the same damn thing. There was a skinny guy on the beach who would get sand kicked in his face, and he would find Charles Atlas's, ads, sign up for it, do whatever Charles Atlas did, become a nice, big, strong guy, and eventually pop the bully who, pushed the sand on his face and took away his girlfriend, by the way. The line changed to make it, no, that's not it. I'm going to tell you exactly what the line changed in a second. And he had gym franchises too. He was a successful guy, and he made a lot of money. But the song, I Can Make You a Man, is referencing that old advertisement. And in the stage play, the version goes like this. The changed portions are this. He'll eat nutritious, high protein, and swallow raw eggs. Try to build up his shoulders, his chest, arms, and legs. Then a magazine advert with a new muscle plan said, in just 7 days, I will make you a man. Next verse, he'd do press-ups and chin-ups, clean and jerk, do the snatch. He thinks dynamic tension, which is what Charles Atlas sold, must be a catch. So he reread the advert just to see how it ran. It said, in just 7 days, I can make you a man. Now that makes perfect fracking sense. It is parodying these ads. Well, for whatever reason, and I suspect probably rights, probably they didn't want that to appear. And Charles Atlas, I think he was still around then, probably had some image he wanted to keep. He said, no, I don't think I want that in a film. So instead, the film lyrics are, he'll eat nutritious, high protein, and to swallow raw eggs. Try to build up his shoulders, his chest, arms, and legs. Such an effort, if he only knew of my plan, that in just 7 days I can make you a man. And this is now not being sung as something that is a parody of this ad. It's being sung from the perspective of Frankenfurter. Next verse. He'll do press-ups and chin-ups, do the snatch, clean and jerk. He thinks dynamic tension must be hard work. Such strenuous living I just don't understand, when in just 7 days I can make you a man. No damned sense. When you hear what the original lyrics were, it makes perfect sense. But for whatever reason, they had to change it, and it makes it into a total cringe moment for me. I didn't know about this until after, and it wasn't long after I started watching Rocky Horror Picture Show with friends. I picked up a copy of what they called the original Roxy Cast version of this that has the actual lyrics that they used on stage in it. Yep. Screwed that up and screws up that song. That song is a parody of these advertisements. Eggs taste totally yucky. Yeah, but it's a trope. It's a trope. And I don't know. It's probably still true. That sometimes, because bodybuilders, people like that, they eat very, very high protein diets. Eggs are a good source of protein. You sometimes see this, at least in films, where they'll break a few eggs into a glass and gulp them down. Me personally, I would be immediately hurling them back up. But it's a trope anyway, and so that's why that line is in there. That's why the line is in there. But again, that change in lyrics is a cringe moment for me because it screws up that song. That song is no longer parodying these ads, and I think that's a loss, unfortunately. Yeah, meat is a good source of protein. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, dynamic tension was probably owned by Charles Atlas. Yeah, I think he probably had some kind of trademark or something on that. And in any case, if I were Charles Atlas, big name at that time anyway, in fitness, not sure I'd want my name so much associated with that movie, So. Then there is Hot Patootie, Bless My Soul, which is, again, another good, catchy song. It's not very long. It's the only time we see Meatloaf on it. But it's a catchy song. Definitely something I remember. By the way, if you're ever casting and you want to bill me as coming out of my 30-year retirement as an actor, you might think about me for this one. I can sing those songs. And the other thing is I would have a different take on it. I would have to have a different take on it because of how my voice is. I would be a little more Elvis. And it would work well if I was also playing Dr. Scott, because that's a radically different thing. I could do a very nasty, caricaturish German accent. So, hey, guys, if you're ever casting this around me, here I am. There's Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch Me, which is basically Janet's song, Once in a While. Now, there's a song that does appear in the stage version, almost always, but is cut from, it is a deleted scene. It's Brad's song, and is cut out of the movie. I have never seen the deleted scene. I suspect it's out there somewhere, but I've never seen it. There's Eddie. Eddie is another one that's pretty catchy, and that's because of the lyrics, stuff like, from the day he was born, he was trouble, and it's just a generally kind of fun film. Planet Schmanet Janet is ripped to shreds in the film, and not to its credit. In the stage play, it makes a lot more sense. It's a coherent song. In the film, it's just ripped in pieces, and little bits of, this, that, and the other thing are around it. In the stage play, it is a coherent song, and it's much better that way. And the show Pool Room, or Shower Pool Room, Meatloaf song, the one with Eddie, Hot Patootie Bless My Soul. That's the Meatloaf one. Yeah, that's the Meatloaf one. There's one called Planet Hot Dog that is okay. When you get into the ones that are the floor show songs, they practically run together. If you don't know that they have different numbers, you may not know that they are different numbers. There are different songs in there. To me, they tend to kind of run together. And because you're getting into that area where, for me, as a viewer, when I first got into it, it starts to become a little bit more uncomfortable for me. Hey, sorry, guys. Call me homophobic if you want to. I'm not really. I'm really not. But that series of numbers tends to make me a little bit more uncomfortable. And I don't think they're as good. I mean, I think they're fine in terms of what they're supposed to be in context. I just don't think they're as good as some of the others, like, Time Warp. The Time Warp is just great. Yeah, the stage play album has the original song. Yeah, it does. It does for that one that's left out for Once in a While, and also it has a more coherent version of Planet Schmanet Janet. That song makes sense in the stage play. Outside of the stage play, it's just chopped into little pieces, and it doesn't work very well. Over the top, raunchy, Rocky Horror music. I don't know if it's necessarily... Everything's over the top here. The whole thing is over the top. That's half the point, is that it's over the top. So, Rose Tint My World. Don't Dream It, Be It. Fine, no real problems with it. Wild and Untamed Thing, fine, no real problems with it. I'm Going Home, fine, no real problems with it. Doesn't jump out at me. And then Superheroes, which is a version that you always hear in the stage play. It's available in the stage play, but it was cut until the release of the Blu-ray edition of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then it is put back in. But for the most part, it was totally cut. And then you have the reprise of Science Fiction Double Feature as the ending titles. And again, it is to some extent referencing old horror movies, but it's also referencing just the events of this film, what we've seen in the film. And I always liked Science Fiction Double Feature. Maybe it's just me, but I always liked that just because you're going through and referencing all these movies that even at the time I knew what were. I hadn't seen them all because we didn't have home video and all that. It wasn't possible to see them all. But I knew what they were. They were famous 1950s, sometimes schlock, sometimes not. I mean, they have Forbidden Planet, and in the opening they say, Anne Francis stars in Forbidden Planet. Well, I knew that one. I'd seen that one. But I knew all these other ones. You know, they talk about Day of the Triffids and all that thing, so it's a pretty good one. Maybe the current JWS people got their bad ideas from Rocky Horror movie. I don't know. Rocky Horror is its own thing. It's just its own thing. It is a one-time, never to be repeated film that has some pretty good, catchy numbers in it that would not have caught on had it not been for the fact that it had this cult following. Would I know at all about time warp if it wasn't for Rocky Horror being what it became? No, I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't. But because it became this cult thing, yeah, I know what it is, and I like the song very much. So, the production design. This is where I ran out of pictures of people. Production design is by Brian Thompson, whose IMDb is 1975 to 2013, with a large gap from 1993 to 2013. He has 12 production designer credits, largely film and some TV movies, but he is otherwise largely a stage designer. He is the same designer, set designer, and production designer as worked on the stage play in London. He was one of the people that Adler brought on. I really like his production design. You know, this alone, right? Who would have thought necessarily to do that? And there's all kinds of detail. You know, you might not have noticed, but your brain did. In the first scene when they are in doing the time warp, they have two pictures of Mona Lisa on either side of the doors that Brad and Janet come in. And Mona Lisa is looking in two different directions. They have stuff all throughout, little details here and there and set pieces and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And to even begin to list them, I mean, I would have to go through frame advance through this film. In fact, try that sometime. The moment they get to the castle, the moment the castle doors open, start frame advancing. Because you will see all of these little details, some of which are parodying things from old science fiction movies, and some of which are just weird to be weird. It is one of the things that contributed when I was first seeing this film, the very first time I saw it, to a certain level of weird creepiness. You know, it's like, that's weird. What's that? You know, and it's not big things. It's not like when Riff Raff opens up the coffin and, you know, starts fiddling around with this skeleton in there. It's little tiny things that are everywhere in this film, just everywhere. Give this guy an enormous amount of credit. I will mention that he won the Australian Film Institute's award in 1984 for the Best Achievement in Production Design for Street Hero, and also in 1987 for the Best Achievement in Production Design for Ground Zero. You know, I think he might deserve an award for this one. In looking at it, and you know, it wasn't anything. That was one of the things about rewatching it in a 4K, not 4K, but a 1080p version. Even if the print was not that great. The 1080p version, I was able to sit down and maybe take a look at some of those odd things that you're just seeing around that castle that are just odd. And he does make good use of the sets that he's got. I don't think you'd notice this, but the floor show takes place in the exact same set as the time warp. Same set, just totally redressed, completely redressed. In the first part of the time warp, it looks like it's a big ballroom with a lot of really weird stuff hither and there, and they have a curtain down. Well, bring the curtain up, take out all the weirdness, fill it with chairs, and you've got where they do the floor show. He makes extraordinarily good use of what must have been a limited budget, and intentionally it's trying to look like a low-budget 1950s film, but still there's all this stuff all over this freaking place. And you get little things like all of the levers. Anytime they pull a lever, it looks like a dildo every single time. And in fact, there's some stuff that the fans do in the audience participation part where somebody will grab onto one of these levers and they'll make some kind of remark about, what are you going to do with that dildo? I don't remember it all. I do not by any means have those audience participation things memorized. I always relied on the people around me who did have them memorized to have some conception of what to do. I knew I had to bring toast, had to bring a squirt gun, had to bring a newspaper, had to bring a couple of things else. But when it came down to the exact stuff, I let the other people around me kind of drive that. Anyone ever noticed the shower room tank pool looked a lot like the Star Trek IV Bird of Prey SS Bounty whale tank? I don't think that was the shower room tank pool. I'm not sure what you're meaning there. Do you mean this thing behind me here? That's straight out of the Curse of Frankenstein. That is straight out of Curse of Frankenstein. And he did that a lot, by the way. The production designer did that a lot. Now, I'm sure there was something similar in the stage play, but you couldn't do what they're doing here, which is float him inside the tank, which is what happened in Curse of Frankenstein. As I say, I may be the Fandi master, but there's always new stuff you can learn. So, Lime Janet watched her husband fracking someone else. Well, yes, the sequels all sort of assumed that Brad had been turned gay by this whole experience, as had been Dr. Scott. The proposed sequels, the one they actually made was nothing. So, there's all that. You have to be a little bit comfortable with that. You have to be able to go into it and go, all right, well, maybe something I don't necessarily approve of, but I'm going to enjoy it anyway because it's just a lot of fun with the audience participation. The thing behind me, yes. I don't think necessarily that was intentional in Star Trek 4. I think that was just practical in their case. There's only so many ways you can make a whale tank inside of a spaceship. But this came straight out of the tank that they had the creature in Curse of Dracula, the Hammer film. Home video has subtitle versions with audience words to say during the film. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Still, it's not the same. It's not the same. The audience participation is really necessary. Whenever I get a chance to see films like, I say it about Star Wars, right? I was lucky. I was so lucky with Star Wars because I got to a CinemaScope screen. And if you don't know what that was, CinemaScope was a curved screen. And when I got there, the place was packed. It was a CinemaScope theater. The place was packed. I ended up being dead center row 1. And so I got this, the field of vision filled my field of view top to bottom and from my peripheral vision all the way around. And the deal with that was the audience was a big part of the movie back then. Not so much today. But back then when you had this theater filled with 1,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs and cheering on Luke Skywalker and cheering on and, occasionally, getting silent when the bad things are happening. It is an infectious thing. The audience itself does impact you, and it becomes something that is a shared experience. And for this film, you got to have that. I mean, even if you've got the lyrics, even if you've got a second audio track with the audience participation stuff on it, ain't the same. It ain't the same. You've got to have the audience. Captain Jesse says, by the end of the Rocky Horror Show, I thought that Brad and Janet were both bisexual in kink BDSM. Well, it was certainly heavily implied, yes. Had any of those stupid sequels that Richard O'Brien written gone forward, it would have been out, and in a couple of them, Brad and Dr. Scott just out and out gay. So, visual effects. Credited for matte paintings is Doug Ferris. Now, he has an IMDb that is 1963 to 1997, exclusively a matte artist and often uncredited. However, we would recognize him for his work on Superman, Superman 2, Supergirl, The Dark Crystal, the 1989 Batman movie, the 1995 Judge Dredd movie, and if you go through his IMDb, it is riddled with many, many science fiction and fantasy movies that we would recognize. So he's done a lot of good work. Here, if he's credited as the matte painter, I would have to say that probably we're talking about, exteriors where they're marrying, shots of like the castle and the castle taking off and stuff like that. I think you'd have to say that work he was doing here was intentionally campy. Having the castle, which I'm sure was partially matte painting, take off at the end. Clearly some level of just intentional campy humor. The effects are not brilliant, and that's on purpose. It's making fun of that B-movie trope where you have a lot of crap. So, excuse me for a second. So, the effect, he won no awards, by the way. The makeup here is, the original makeup design is credited to Pierre Larouche. Okay, interesting thing about him. He only has 2 makeup department credits, Rocky Horror Picture Show and also Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders, and he's got 1 acting credit, Going Down the Road. However, he was largely a makeup artist for rock stars. David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Bianca Jagger, Elsa Peretti, a whole list of ones. He was on their tour cruise. He did makeup for them when they did things like tour photo shoots. This was a guy who was largely involved in that side of the world. So when we talk about the original makeup here, and he's won no awards, but again, that's the side of the world that he was in, not so much film. When we talk about the makeup award here, it's really rather iconic. It's really rather iconic, particularly Frank. That is some makeup. I don't know, because I'm not old enough. I don't know what sort of the trans community, the ones that are really flamboyant and out there, looked like prior to Frank. But I know that after Rocky Horror Picture Show became big, that makeup was copied and copied and copied and copied and copied. A lot of people who were really flamboyant, in terms of trans, not the ones that we see today necessarily, but the guys who were doing, shows and things like that, they owe everything to Frankenfurter's makeup and consequently this makeup artist, Pierre Larouche. It's just iconic. The rest of the makeup, he's got some good stuff that he does with Magenta and with Riff Raff, especially at the end when they come out with totally different types of makeup than they were wearing before it. And Magenta's got that, Bride of Frankenstein hair complete with the big, white stripe on the side. And what he does with Columbia is interesting. I guess it works. I always found it a little odd, to be honest. But, hey, it works. So, no problem. No problem. And again, his makeup for Frankenfurter is probably responsible for more tranny shows and stuff than you can shake a stick at today. Captain Jesse says, somehow I could Fox, Disney, and Kathleen Kennedy after the merger of Disney trying to make the actual Rocky Horror Picture Show movie with the writer's permission. Not a sequel. No. I don't even think Kathleen Kennedy would be that stupid. This is a film that was a one-time thing. It was lightning in a bottle, and you will never, ever do it again. And it was largely lightning in a bottle because of the fans. If it hadn't been for that, this would have gone nowhere, just as it was starting to do when they put it out. So, end of the review. I would have to ask, is this any good? Yes, but as a standalone film, it sucks. It has some great songs with some memorable musical numbers, but otherwise it sucks. It was, as I say at the beginning, originally kind of aimed at this specific subculture of the time that embraced homosexuality and a certain level of transvestism, and that was not considered appropriate in 1975, still kind of controversial today. However, when you get that audience in there, And it's not just what they're doing, it's the fact that they're doing it around you. As I said, the enthusiasm is infectious. You know, when people start getting up to go out and dance the time warp in the aisles, you don't, as an audience member, say to yourself, gee, should I go do that? I don't know. It's just, yeah, let's go dance the time warp. You know, it's very infectious, and you must have that audience participation, or it's a terrible movie. I would not bother watching it on home video unless you are with a bunch of friends who know this audience participation stuff and you are doing it while you watch it. You just need that audience participation. Without it, you're done. You know, otherwise it's going to be boring. It's going to be stupid. It's going to be like, what is this dumb movie about? You know, the musical numbers are fine, but what is this movie about? Well, the movie's about 90 minutes long. That's what it's about. Captain just says it is born with a limited story and a major touch of homosexuality and a touch of kinky BDSM. Yeah. The movie is about 90 minutes long. You need the audience participation. Without it, you're just done. You're just done. You gotta have it. So that would conclude that review. That's what I think. It is a fun movie if you're going to see it with an audience. Without the audience, don't even bother. You know, go find it at a midnight movie and go watch it with friends and go watch it with a good audience who knows how to have fun with it, who knows the rituals and the places where things are supposed to happen. Even if you haven't seen it before, even if you are, as they call people who've never seen this movie before, a virgin, even if you are, you will still enjoy yourself because you'll be going, oh, this is kind of catchy. You know, even if you don't know how to dance the time warp, well, hell, they tell you in the film. It's just a jump to the left and then a step to the right. You put your hands on your hips, bring your knees in tight. But then it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane. I need to know, that's the whole dance. You know, they tell you right in the film. So yes, gotta have it with the audience. Without it, it's just crap. So a little bit, if I can find it, because I didn't remember to put my frickin' correct thing in here. So let me find my right card. Okay. Said last night, if you watched the review for Doctor Who. By the way, apologize. Last night I discovered I had a whole frackload of dropped frames. That's because I had to completely reconfigure open broadcast software that runs the back end of this and neglected to change a couple of the settings. Hopefully that's not a problem tonight. If you ever see me where I'm doing drop frames like that, please let me know. I was dropping frames writing left, and I hate doing that during a review. Captain Jesse says, I wonder how many men and women in their late teens and early 20s masturbated to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't know, probably not many. It was not certainly high on my list because of the subject matter. At the time, Janet wandering around in her underwear was kind of risque. And Susan Sarandon was certainly a very attractive woman at that time, but I don't recall it being at the top of my list. I don't know. Maybe more if you were gay. Don't know. Have to ask a homosexual about that. Don't know. But I do have some commentary tonight, as I mentioned last night. I was not going to do it last night. First thing, something that's at least only of interest, bad news in terms of the IT world. Today it was announced that IBM is acquiring Red Hat software. Red Hat had previously made one of the most popular Linux distributions out there. Whenever IBM buys something, they frack it up. Guys in IT, if you are still using Red Hat, if you are using CentOS, which is based off of Red Hat, if you are using Fedora, it is time to switch distributions because IBM is going to frack this up. They always do. It's like Microsoft buying something. You can be certain that it is going to get fracked up in particularly short order. IBM, Big Blue, have fracked up just about everything they touch. Their support is horrible. Their licensing fees are outrageous. They try to essentially lock you into buying just their stuff every single time. And when they do this with Red Hat, it's over. It's over. It's time to get out. If you're using that distribution, quit. Go over to Ubuntu, or better yet, what I'm doing, Linux Mint. Go to something other than that. In the cloud right now, Ubuntu is one of the most popular distributions. Use Ubuntu. IBM has bought Red Hat. It's done. It's over. Stick a fork in it. Yep, Microsoft, as Larry says, bought GitHub. Just wait. Just wait. It'll be blown. It'll be screwed. Yes, Microsoft and IBM are pain in the tech and software companies. And are they still business partners? Oh, occasionally in places, but they haven't really been business partners since Microsoft came out with Microsoft Windows way back when. At the time, they were working on an operating system called OS2 that was supposed to replace DOS. But then Microsoft decided to start working on Windows instead of OS2. OS2 died, and Microsoft and IBM have never really seen eye to eye ever since. Pardon me, side effect again. Once again, I've attempted to drink water to bad effect. Speaking of bad effect, there have obviously last week been some bad things that happened. And we all know what they've been. I don't like repeating these people's names, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to use the hashtag #CrazyVanGuy for the guy that started sending out what may have been, what could have been at least, pipe bombs to all over the frackin' place. And repeatedly, thank you, the wonderful United States Postal Service. Some of them appear to be still showing up at places. Yeah. I'm watching the press now, blaming Trump for this guy. Okay, I ain't no Trump fan. I think that to some extent Trump takes it way over the top when he's in his campaign mode. But I'm a libertarian. I think everybody's an individual. You cannot blame the actions of someone who is an obvious nut job. The best thing you can say about him is he's such a stupid idiot that he couldn't figure out how to make a bomb that would actually explode. When I saw the x-rays of those things, I knew they couldn't explode. I have just enough knowledge about firearms and how stuff works in terms of pipe bombs, which, by the way, are incredibly easy to make. When I saw the x-rays, I went, oh, these are never going to detonate. You know, why would you even put a clock on the thing? You know, you're sending it through the mail. You have no idea when it's going to arrive. The thing could blow up in transit. That would be stupid. You know, obviously, guy short quite a lot of screws. Not generally a fan of the death penalty, but in this case, I kind of am. I'm fine with Crazy Van Guy getting the death penalty. Yep, IBM paid, as Larry says, $34 billion for a $20 billion value Red Hat. Yeah. Does that mean IBM and Lenovo are on a Linux system? No, Lenovo is totally separate from IBM and has been for some time. That's not why they bought it. They just bought it. Here's the thing. They're trying to compete with Amazon in the web services space. They want to make a virtualized infrastructure. Well, IBM's been trying to do that and trying to do that and trying to do that and failing miserably. Red Hat offers them the opportunity to do that. The problem is that IBM screws up everything they touch. So if you're in Red Hat now, if you're in any of its downstream distros like CentOS, like Fedora, time to go. Time to find another distribution. I recommend Linux Mint. It is what I use here for this show. They're asked, are they really bombs or some powder? I'm not even sure they're powder. Looking at those x-rays, I'm not sure what he put in there aside from maybe some nails or something. I'm not sure he's actually got any. He actually had anything in there. I don't think these things could ever have exploded from what I'm able to see. But that doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. You always have to treat these things as potentially real explosives. And this guy was a nut job. You know, he was sending stuff around Democratic and other, left-leaning news outlets and stuff like that. No, obviously wrong. Obviously wrong. And as a libertarian, I do not hold Donald Trump responsible. I think probably Scott Adams has said it best. If you're not subscribed to Scott Adams over on Periscope, do, because he explained this correctly. He said, well, in a country the size of this, if somebody is hearing the type of rhetoric that Trump generally throws out there, there is a 100% chance that some loony is going to get triggered. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Trump is at fault. You have a whole series of events that occurred in this loony's life, and you can't point to Trump and say that's why he did it. You know, Trump may be bombastic, he may be over the top sometimes, but normal, sane people aren't going to do this. This guy was a loony. And so I don't, I'm a libertarian. Everybody's an individual. He's responsible for his own actions and nothing else. Yeah, Linux is huge on servers. Absolutely they are. And Red Hat was one of the leading ones on servers. If you are using Red Hat, time to get out. One of those times, again, when I'm sort of glad I'm not in the industry, because there's going to be an enormous amount of activity within the next couple of years to divest themselves of Red Hat. Captain Jesse asks, could the packages have been made and delivered by an insider? No, there's no insider here. No, this guy was just a nut. He was just a nut. That's all there is to it. He was crazy. Look at his stupid van. Evidence of a complete nut job. If he doesn't get the death penalty, it'll only be because he'll be found not guilty by reason of insanity and placed in a mental institution for the rest of his fracking life. And then we have had some shootings, the worst of which was the synagogue shooter. And again, don't want to put these guys' names out there. I think it just, when you sit there and you throw these names out over and over and over and over, ultimately you sort of, kind of, are encouraging potential copycats. I don't want to do that. And then we had one in a nightclub within the last, 48 hours, I think, an LA nightclub. Although obviously pales in comparison to that synagogue shooter. I can only say what I have said a million times whenever this happens. The answer to this problem is an armed society. If you have a nut job who's going around and trying to shoot up some synagogue and some percentage, unknown percentage in unknown directions of people have the ability to defend themselves, he's going to be taken down in a hail of lead from multiple unknown directions, and he will not have a chance to kill all those people. You need to allow people to exercise their Second Amendment rights, as is their birthright as Americans, and as a natural right as human beings. Somebody, some crazy, is always going to be out there. You must allow people to exercise their rights to protect themselves. If they had in this instance, I guarantee that at least some of those people would still be alive. And I'll have you know that in conversations I've had with people, this is the same things I have. For 13 years, I went to Mass with my ex and my family for family unity, not necessarily because I believed it, but for family unity. When we lived in South Dakota, where it was very, very easy to get a concealed carry license, I carried at the church. Why? Because if some nut job was going to come in there and start shooting the place up, I was going to be the one that was going to try to take him down before he could kill any of those parishioners. And I was not the only one. And people I've talked to since have said exactly the same thing. They carry in church. Let them defend themselves with the same deadly force that these people have access to by virtue of being crazy and criminals. And this is another one where I'm generally not in favor of the death penalty. This one, yeah, just outright kill the guy. I have no problem with that. Call me. I will be happy to be the one that pulls the lever in the electric chair or sticks that thing in his arm to kill him. I have no problem with that. Does anyone remember the Watergate scandal? That was an inside job. Well, yes, but I don't think these are inside jobs in any way. I think these are crazy people. You get into a country this size, there are going to be crazy people, and you cannot stop them. The best you can do is arm yourself so that if they show up, you can kill them, or at least try to, before they have a chance to murder lots of people like these people did. I don't know what's real in the news. All news stations report are mostly lies. Well, as I mentioned last night, if you go over to Periscope, where I'm going to be talking about this show in particular in a moment, if you go over to Periscope, subscribe to Agenda Free TV, which is run by Steve Lookner. Subscribe to that, because he does the news the way that I would do it. You know, sometimes I've come on and I've talked about breaking events and how I do it. You know, go to Google Maps, not pay so much attention to the press. Don't assume that what they're saying is necessarily accurate. He's doing that. Because he's doing that, I no longer feel the need to come on. I'm just going to, you know, something happens, I'm going to go out and say, this guy's doing it. This guy's doing it right. Go watch him. He's the one to watch. He's doing it right. I trust him. I trust literally not a single other person. Go watch him. And he's not doing a 24-hour news channel. It's just him. It's a one-man operation. And he comes on when there is breaking news, stuff that matters. He's not droning at you 24/7, 365. Go watch the guy. He's got a great, great show. Subscribe to Agenda Free TV and have a look. I'll talk about why Twitter in a minute, but have a look at his Twitter. He's Steve Lookner, and he does take suggestions and comments from his audience. He has repeatedly put out my tweets on there when it seems appropriate. So I have a lot of respect for the guy. If I had money to give him, I would. If you have money to give him after you watch him, if you think he's any good, and I'm sure you will, give him the money. He is doing an amazing job where nobody else in the press is. If you don't believe anybody, watch Agenda Free TV, because you will believe him, and you should. He does it the way that I would do it. Government won't let you confine crazies. Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. If you could just say, you know, that guy kind of strikes me as crazy, well, they could put anybody in. The way that they do it, it's a very simple definition. You have to be a danger to yourself or to others. Unfortunately, until you actually do something, how do you know if they're a danger to themselves or others? You don't. There's no way to tell. Unfortunately, you have to allow them to do the thing first. Otherwise, we have a worse police state than we do now. The only way out of it? Let people defend themselves. Don't disarm them the way that they are in Philadelphia. If some number of those people in that synagogue had been armed, that man would have been dead before he could have killed all those people. Captain just says, yet a bipolar person happened to take a manic episode with dangerous sex, happened to get sent to therapy, hospitalized. Bipolar is a little bit different. I, for a while, unfortunately, dated a bipolar girl. When you get down to the, you know, they used to call that manic depressive. When you get into the depressive phase of that, they can often become a danger to themselves. And in the case where I was dating that woman, she knew when she was becoming a danger to herself, and the people around her knew, and could get her hospitalization because she needed it. It was at that point something where a psychiatrist or a psychologist could just interview her and say, okay, she's suicidal, danger to herself, she can be confined. The litmus test is, are they a danger to themselves or others? And sometimes you don't know until such time as they actually do something. It's just that simple. So, going forward on this show, because that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Going forward on the show. I mentioned this last night, I mentioned it again tonight, and I'll mention it on Wednesday when I'm having my special. I am going to move this show. YouTube has fracked me, and there is every chance that they will frack me again if I don't get off here quick. So I'm moving to Periscope. That'll be periscope.tv. SYL Ranch. Now, I'm going to Periscope for a number of reasons. Partly because, well, Scott Adams is over there. Steve Lookner from Agenda Free TV is over there. They have a very nice handheld app. In fact, the handheld app is actually marginally better than the web-based app. The handheld app is actually kind of cool. It's anybody can go on here. It's kind of like YouTube, except it's intended for live streaming. So what happens is one of the things you do on the handheld app is you can tap a globe and just fool around with what amounts to a map of the world where people are streaming from and choose any one of them, or choose from a list of people that have recently streamed. So it's got a really good handheld app. Now, like I say, YouTube killed my original channel, and I'm having to start over. There's just no way around it. I'm having to start over in terms of building an audience. And while I am utterly grateful to you, Larry, Captain Jesse, Super Crew 63, Marshall Presnell, Jay Haley, and others who are here every week, fact is, what I was doing over there wasn't getting a lot of view counts, and I didn't have a lot of subs, and I can't stay here very long. I'm pushing my luck as it is. Right now, that other channel, that account is completely barred from using YouTube, even as a viewer. So I can't let this happen again. I can't let it happen again. And it looks to me like probably Periscope is a good place to go now. Why? Well, as I've often said here on YouTube, the 4 factors that you need in order to be successful are young, attractive, female, gamer. If you have some combination of those, you probably do pretty well. If you're all 4, you are probably gold. I am precisely zilch. And that's part of the reason I've had problems doing things. But Periscope has a much wider age variety, and mostly it's done from cell phones. They seem to be largely bored individuals who turn on their phones when they have very little going on, and they just kind of hope that people like watching them. And my shtick is very different. Having been a college instructor rather than a professor, my reviews are more in depth, and I have production values, very high production values compared to Periscope, not as high as I'd like, but definitely higher production values. I have done something over 300 YouTube videos, and so I have learned about performance and presentation and how to do that. And all of that is totally lacking on Periscope. And again, the age range is very wide. So my being a very different presentation makes me think that I may possibly have some chance of success over there, where I haven't really had a lot of success here. Now, Periscope does have disadvantages. They don't have descriptions, that you can really put things in. And I like to do big descriptions, which frankly what got me in trouble here. I like to do big descriptions, but what I'm going to do is I will do my Periscopes over there, and I will be taking those and putting the information I usually have in descriptions onto my webpage. And so you can, go to sylranch.sdf.org and see all of that stuff and all the citations and go to places and links that you want to. Give it a few months, Google, YouTube loses too much money and will want me back. No, they won't. No, they won't. Not as somebody who had 200 subs and whose view count was under 50 most of the time. I am tiny to them. They do not care. They will never want me back. They don't care. And I am banned for life on that account. If they find out I'm here, and banned for life here too. So I can't stay here. They have caused it to make it impossible. I can't stay. It's impossible. One of the other things about Periscope is it is heavily integrated with Twitter. And if you've watched me very long, I hate Twitter. I think it's the single largest repository of stupidity in the history of the human race. However, it is tightly integrated, such that if you do a Periscope, it automatically tweets it out to all of your followers with the thing embedded right in it. You don't have to do anything else. So, despite what I think about Twitter, it is a huge marketing platform and a successful one at that. As I mentioned last night, I always have this battle between these two people that sit on my shoulders. One over here is Herb Tarlick, the slimy marketing guy, and over here is Angelic, our artistic integrity, and they sometimes have little arguments. On this one, because I am forced to leave. I don't want to. I am forced to. Tarlik said, Bill, you might as well do the Twitter thing, and only do it for marketing purposes. So if you're going to be on Twitter, just sub to me. Just follow me so that you get the notifications. Now, the handheld app that they have, the mobile app they have, is very, very good about that. The people that I am subbed to on that, I am constantly notified the moment that they go live. So you can do that too. You don't have to do Twitter necessarily, but they are linked at the hip. And in terms of making an audience, that's probably a better thing for me. It means I have a potential of a larger audience because of that. Get your videos from YouTube archived on my own machine. Oh, well, they've already deleted them all, but I had long been making a habit of downloading them. I have every single one. And that's the other thing. What I'm going to be doing is, it looks like Periscope will archive these indefinitely, but I don't trust, because Periscope's YouTube or is Twitter, so I don't trust them any more than I trust YouTube. So, although they seem to be allowing just about anybody, that's the other thing. It's a relatively new service. There aren't that many people on it, and I don't think there's a single person on there who's doing what I'm doing right now. I'm not even sure there's any reviewers on there right now. So, again, I think this is a potential where coming in on the ground may give me an opportunity to be more successful on Periscope than I have been so far on YouTube. But I won't be changing anything I'm doing. I will still have my exact same schedule. I will still be doing the exact same kind of reviews. I will not be changing a thing. It's just that beginning next Sunday with my review of the next episode of Doctor Who, I will be going to Periscope, and I will be pointing viewers to my websites where I have documentation, and then I will also be backing things up, not just to my own local computer, but also to BitChute, because BitChute doesn't care. And BitChute has been automatically grabbing most of everything I've got, and oddly enough, I've got about the same, maybe slightly more number of views on the BitChute video side than I do here on YouTube, or I did on YouTube. So, website can show the catalog of my videos. Yes, that's my intent, is to integrate my website more tightly with Periscope so that it can show what's going on. Absolutely. So, for those of you who are my regular viewers, I deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate you. And I would very humbly beg you, please follow me over to Periscope. It's a real simple URL. It's periscope.tv/SYL Ranch. Real simple. Go over there. You can follow me. And starting this coming Sunday, that is where you will be able to find me. Please follow me there. Please do. I have really enjoyed having you. You have been extraordinarily supportive to me, not just financially, but both in terms of moral support. I really enjoy the questions that you ask, no matter how crazy they may seem, if they're off topic or on topic, I don't care. I love dealing with you guys. Please, pretty please, pretty please, pretty please, pretty please follow me over there. I would really love it if you did. You know, I really appreciate you far more than you could imagine. It is, when I mentioned getting money, when people have donated to me, it is an enormous piece of, you know, it's a huge ego stroke for me that after all these years, 30 years out of anything resembling theater, that somebody would pay me for this. That they'd not only pay me for my opinions, but they would pay me to do what I'm doing now. I get a huge kick out of it, and I very much hope that you will all follow me over there. I think that you'll find that probably it's as inviting, if not more so, than YouTube. And I'm really impressed by the mobile app. That's really very cool. You can just go and anywhere around the world and tap something and suddenly be watching somebody stream. And it's all live. They do have one. They're archived. They do archives. But it's really rather cool. I like their app in some ways better than YouTube's. It isn't as advanced when it comes to things like, you know, written comments on the videos, but that's because this is all streamed and designed for streaming. It is designed more for what I'm doing. But you can make the same things. We have the same things we have going on here with, you know, live streaming, live comments. They're there. You can still do it. So please do follow me over. Please, I beg you, please follow me over. I want to have the same people over there. It would be awesome. Do you need to sign up for Periscope? You can log in a couple different ways. If you have a Twitter account, you can log in with that. If you have a Google account, you can log in with that. If you just want to use your own email, just regular email types to log in, you can do that. Myself, I've linked both my my Google and my Twitter to it, which the Twitter side of it turns out to be important. Because if somebody on the Twitter side has subbed to me, if they're following me on the Twitter side, that means anything I do, anything on the Periscope side, they're getting notified. Because these two things are joined at the hip. I hate Twitter, but as a marketing platform for this particular purpose, I cannot. It is a good marketing tool. So, you like giving opinions? I love it too. How is it for comments? Like I say, same thing as we're doing here. You can't really comment on the videos after they have streamed, but during the stream. Live streams just like we see here. A little bit of different setup on the desktop side. But again, I'm very impressed with their handheld app. Last couple of 3 nights, I've been killing time late at night just by going out to watch what people are doing. There was one that was fantastic. I had no idea this job even existed. Okay, so it turns out there's this manufacturer called Bird who makes scooters. And they make them to be used in generally places that are high tourist areas. They're motorized scooters. And so what people do is they basically get them from almost anywhere and leave them almost anywhere. I don't know how this works because a lot of places I've lived, if you did that, the things would be stripped in about 5 minutes. But they have a GPS attached to them. So they leave these things anywhere, and then they hire these people who will go out and use a handheld app that they've got to geolocate these things, find them, bring them back to their own homes where they have been given chargers for these things, and then they're ready to go for the next day. I'd never heard anything like this. So I'm watching this one woman who's doing this, and this is her living. And so she was just streaming what she was doing, and it was just fascinating. It was like watching, it was like Repo Man, but for scooters, and she even had a couple where the people were trying to be jerks, and they let the scooter out in the middle of a field, and so she used the GPS and she found the thing. it was just for about an hour and a half. I just sat there watching her picking up scooters, and it was riveting. Not everybody's like that, but I got more production values than most. I think there's probably some good chance I'll be all right over there. San Francisco, something scooter repair. No, this isn't a scooter repair thing. This is a rental thing. They rent these scooters for a day. They go around and do whatever they're going to do, and then they leave them anywhere. Literally anywhere. They don't have to take them back someplace. So they hire these people to go out, get them, charge them overnight, and then take them to where they need to go so the people can use them again. Apparently, they don't even have like regular drop-off places for them, right? Where you go to a specific point. You just put them on the street and people start using them. Now, this is someplace in Arizona. I think may have been Phoenix, but it may not have been Phoenix. But it was a heavy tourist area in Arizona. It may have been Sonoma, not remembering. But I'd never heard of this business before, but it was absolutely riveting to watch her do it. And you get some of those sometimes. So again, please follow me over. Please, pretty please follow me over. I'd love to see you guys over there. You can think of it this way. Sometimes a TV show gets canceled by a network, but it gets picked up by another network. That's kind of what's happening here. YouTube has canceled me, and so I am going to go over to another network. And that network, to me, at this point, the most likelihood of getting some success is going to be Periscope. So that's where I'm going to be next week. Starting Sunday, periscope.tv/SYL Ranch. So, the begging and stuff to please follow me over, and please do. I really appreciate you guys. I would probably do just a little bit of ad copy because I got a few things coming up. So, this Wednesday on Tales from SYL Ranch, it's Halloween with the Fandi Master. Join us for the 80th anniversary broadcast of the Mercury Theater on the Air's production of The War of the Worlds, starring H.G. Orson Welles. Jesus God, how did I screw that up? Starring Orson Welles. And you will discover a shocking secret about what did and didn't happen on Halloween Eve in 1938. Then, Sunday, on Periscope, injured and stranded in the wilds of a far-flung galaxy, the Doctor and her companions must band together with a group of strangers to deal with one of the universe's most deadly and unusual creatures. That's Sunday on the Fandi Masters mini-review of Doctor Who Season 11, Episode 5, The Suranga Conundrum. And of course, Tales from SYL Ranch is ordinarily live Sundays and Mondays, and this week on Wednesday for Halloween in North America at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off of UTC, that'll be 1 a.m. the following morning. And again, Sunday, I will start over at Periscope. This Wednesday, my last vlogcast from here, and it will be War of the Worlds, starring H.G. Wells, starring Orson Welles from 1938. Captain Jesse asks, what happens if YouTube suddenly drops 70% of its clients? How fast would you lose money? They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about it. They don't care about it anymore. YouTube is very definitely, clearly headed toward being essentially a clearinghouse for other major media outlets. That's where they're going. You know, they're trying to get you to pay directly, not just by advertising, but they have YouTube Red. They have all of the various news organizations who are now coming on here. They're just going to be another thing. They're going to be another thing just like all the rest. And they're going to make money on it. They don't have to care. You know, maybe down the road with nobody coming up behind people like, some of the younger YouTubers, maybe they'll have problems. But they don't have to care at this point. And I do. I have to care. I have to do something. I don't have any choice. I really don't have any choice. They have forced this. I have kicked around pulling the trigger on this for a long time. This time, now, I have to. They've left me with no choice. You surprised YouTube is not pushing porn yet? Give them time. Give them time. No, I don't think they'll do that. Too many porn sites out there. Upcoming reviews after War of the Worlds on November 5th. I'm doing the Quatermass Experiment from 1953, a BBC production. November 12th, the Barbarella, which may be marginally easier to do than this one was. Then, just in time for the holidays, the Star Wars Holiday Special, abridged 45-minute watchable edition, so you don't have to sit through the entirety of that crap unless you're some kind of masochist or a real Star Wars completist and you want to see the whole thing. November 26th, Quatermass 2, the sequel to Quatermass Experiment. And November 3rd, The Fly, starring Vincent Price, is having its anniversary. And then, on December 10th, on its 40th anniversary, Superman, the movie, as I keep saying, the best Superman movie ever made, and quite possibly the best Superman movie that will ever be made. December 17th, I'm doing the Quatermass stuff because I want to get around to Quatermass in the Pit before the year is out because it's having its 60th anniversary. Dark on Christmas Eve, and on December 26th, assuming everything works out with my family, I will spend the entire 2 hours reviewing the Doctor Who Christmas special for 2018. If I really get crazy, depending on how things go on the 25th, I might just do that on the 25th. I don't know. A lot of people are going to be a family. But the 26th, if nothing else. Have to worry about Canadians and Boxing Day. But aside from that, should be good. Let's see. December 31st. It will be New Year's Eve with the Fandi Master. I will be staying up from 8 p.m. to Central Time to midnight in all North American time zones, which will get me up until about 2 a.m. So remember to bring your sham pipple, because we'll also be reviewing Orville, Season 2, Episode 1, Primal urges. So I would also probably, at this point, suggest something like this.
Say, pardon me, but could you help out a fellow American down on his luck? Hit the road!
So, if you like what I'm doing, well, here, liking, subbing, telling all your friends and families and neighbors is less important. Go over to periscope.tv, follow me there, and to tell all your friends, family, neighbors, and pets, and livestock to do exactly the same thing. Go to periscope.tv/SYL Ranch and follow me there. I have links on my website. I can't put them in the descriptions down here without killing myself again and alerting YouTube to my presence. But I do have links for that on my website. You just go to sylranch.sdf.org, and you will find links to my PayPal tip jar, my Patreon, my Amazon wish list, and as always, if you want to buy the laptop that's in there outright, you get to be the program director on this show. I become your slave. So again, that's at my website, sylranch.sdf.org. And thank you, Captain Jesse. You have a good night as well, and I will hopefully see you on Wednesday. So, as always, I got to thank my viewers. I don't want to extend this out too fracking long and say thank you a billion times over again, but I have to thank anybody who has contributed to me financially. It is a huge, huge thing for me, both in terms of my ability to maybe get some better equipment, have some better production values, maybe come at you even more in, 24 to 30 frames per second, which would be nice. And I also have to thank you just for moral support. The fact that somebody would pay me to do this at all is really just a giant ego boost to me, and I love doing it. So thank you. In the immortal words of Elvis Presley, thank you. Thank you very much. So I guess that's probably about all the time we have today, boys and girls. So tune in again this Wednesday on Halloween for my 80th anniversary live stream of War of the Worlds starring Orson Welles. And so until Wednesday, this is Tales from SYL Ranch, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.